Elon Musk stared at the handwritten letter in his hand, the sharp hum of activity at Tesla's headquarters fading into the background. The letter was unexpected, wedged between stacks of routine correspondence. Its childlike scrawl, written on lined paper, caught his attention immediately. He leaned back in his chair, rereading the first line. Dear Mr. Musk, my name is Ethan Parker, and I'm 11 years old. I think you're the coolest inventor in the world. A faint smile tugged at Elon's lips, but as his eyes moved further down the page, his expression softened. Ethan's letter wasn't just the fan mail he often received. The boy wrote about his condition, a rare neurological disorder that made walking and controlling his movements increasingly difficult. Ethan explained how much he admired Elon's work, especially his innovations in technology that made the impossible seem possible. I've been working on an idea for a special kind of wheelchair, Ethan had written. Something kids like me can control easily and use to explore the world without needing so much help. But I don't know how to make it real. I think maybe you can help me. Elon placed the letter down and exhaled deeply. It wasn't the first time someone had reached out to him with a plea, but there was something about Ethan's words, a mix of raw honesty and unshakable hope, that resonated deeply. The boy had included a rough sketch of his idea. Elon picked it up, studying the lines and notes scribbled in pencil. It wasn't polished, but it had potential. Ethan's dream was ambitious yet painfully simple in its intent, to give himself and others like him a chance to live with more freedom. Elon tapped his fingers on the desk, his mind racing. He had meetings to attend, deadlines to meet, and shareholders to appease. But none of it felt as urgent as the message in his hands. He leaned forward, pulling up his laptop to research Ethan's condition. The more he read, the more determined he became. This wasn't just about building a better wheelchair. It was about giving a child the tools to dream bigger and live more fully. A knock on his door snapped him out of his thoughts. Jared, one of his assistants, poked his head in. Elon, your next meeting's starting in 5, Jared said, glancing curiously at the paper in Elon's hand. Cancel it, Elon replied without looking up. Cancel? The board's expecting you. I'll reschedule. Elon's tone left no room for debate. I need time to think. As Jared retreated, Elon folded the letter carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. His mind was already formulating the first steps. He would need his best engineers, specialists in mobility tech, and perhaps even medical consultants. But before any of that, he needed to meet Ethan. Looking out the window at the sprawling cityscape, Elon wondered what Ethan was doing right now. Was he sitting in his room, imagining what his creation might look like? Did he believe his letter would even reach its destination? For the first time in weeks, Elon felt a spark of something beyond deadlines and profit margins. It was the same spark that had driven him as a young man to challenge convention and chase the impossible. He grabbed his phone, dialing his personal assistant. I want to visit someone, he said firmly. Find me an address. His name is Ethan Parker. The wheels were already turning, and for the first time in years, they weren't on a Tesla or a SpaceX rocket. They were for a boy with an extraordinary dream. Ethan Parker sat at the small desk in his bedroom, the faint whir of his laptop filling the quiet air. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the sketches scattered around him. Some smudged, others carefully inked. His pencil scratched furiously across the paper as he worked on yet another improvement to his idea. This was his favorite part of the day, the hours after school when he could escape into his world of ideas. Ethan's room was a testament to his love for invention. Shelves were crammed with books on engineering and science, alongside makeshift models made of Lego, cardboard, and duct tape. Posters of Elon Musk's SpaceX rockets and Tesla cars covered the walls, their sleek designs an endless source of inspiration. Ethan, dinner's ready. His mom's voice called from the kitchen. He paused, staring at the half-finished drawing in front of him. It was a rough sketch of a wheelchair, a sleek, lightweight model with robotic arms and customizable controls. Ethan had been tweaking it for months, fueled by a single goal: to create something that would make kids like him feel less trapped. I'll be right there, he shouted back, his voice cracking slightly from excitement. He wheeled himself away from the desk, his movements deliberate. His arms ached from pushing himself around all day, but he didn't let it show when he entered the kitchen. The smell of spaghetti filled the air as his mom, a petite woman with tired eyes and a warm smile, placed 2 plates on the table. "How's my little inventor?" she asked, ruffling his messy brown hair. "Not little anymore, Mom," Ethan replied with mock indignation. "And I think I've got it this time. The design is finally coming together." She smiled, though there was a shadow of worry in her gaze. "That's great, sweetheart. But don't forget to take breaks, okay?" Ethan nodded absent-mindedly, already thinking about his next tweak. His mom didn't press further. She knew her son well enough to recognize when his mind was somewhere else. As they ate, Ethan's thoughts drifted back to the letter he'd sent weeks ago. He had poured every ounce of hope into it, telling himself it was a long shot. After all, why would someone like Elon Musk take time to read a letter from a random kid? Still, a small part of him clung to the possibility. Later that evening, as his mom washed dishes, Ethan returned to his room. He opened his laptop and navigated to a website where he often shared his ideas. Posting there made him feel like he was part of something bigger, a community of thinkers and dreamers who didn't see his wheelchair as a limitation, but as a challenge to overcome. He uploaded his latest design with a caption: "What if mobility wasn't a struggle, but a freedom? Here's my dream for a wheelchair that changes everything." He clicked post, then leaned back, staring at the screen. Comments started trickling in almost immediately, some encouraging, others offering technical advice. Ethan loved that about the community. No one treated him differently just because he had a condition. His phone buzzed suddenly, breaking his focus. "Unknown number," he muttered, frowning slightly. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Hi, is this Ethan Parker?" The voice on the other end was calm and professional but unfamiliar. Yeah. Who's this?" "This is Megan from the office of Elon Musk. Mr. Musk received your letter and would like to arrange a meeting with you." Ethan froze. His heart pounded as he replayed the words in his head, certain he must have misheard. "Wait, Elon Musk? Like the Elon Musk?" "Yes," the woman replied with a small laugh. "He was very impressed by your letter and sketches. Are you available to meet him sometime next week?" Ethan didn't respond immediately. He could barely process what was happening. The man he admired most in the world wanted to meet him. "Why, yeah," he finally stammered. "I'm available anytime." Megan chuckled again. "Great. I'll send the details to your mom. We look forward to seeing you, Ethan." As the call ended, Ethan sat in stunned silence. Then a grin slowly spread across his face. He grabbed a nearby notebook and scribbled furiously, "Meeting Elon Musk? Don't panic." Downstairs, his mom's voice called again. "Ethan, is everything okay?" Ethan burst out of his room, his wheelchair nearly clipping the corner of the hallway. "Mom, you're not going to believe this." That night, as he lay in bed, Ethan couldn't sleep. His mind raced with questions and possibilities. He didn't know what the meeting would bring, but for the first time in a long while, his dream felt less like a distant star and more like something just within reach. Elon Musk rarely allowed himself time to reflect. Between juggling Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and countless other projects, his days blurred together in a whirlwind of deadlines and ambitions. But Ethan Parker's letter was different. Sitting in his home office late one night, Elon found himself rereading the letter. The boy's words had an honesty that cut through the noise of his usual correspondence. Ethan wasn't asking for fame or fortune, just the chance to bring his dream to life. Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The boy's story reminded him of his own childhood in South Africa. Back then, he was a scrawny kid who loved books and struggled to fit in. While other children played sports, he spent hours in the local library, devouring science fiction and dreaming about the stars. He remembered the bullies who taunted him and the loneliness that often accompanied his relentless curiosity. It wasn't until he built his first computer game, a simple space shooter at the age of 12, that he realized his love for technology could be his way out. Now, decades later, he saw echoes of that same determination in Ethan. The boy's sketches weren't just drawings. They were blueprints for a better future, not just for him but for countless others. Elon glanced at his laptop. His schedule for the week was packed with meetings, investor calls, and product reviews. But none of it felt as important as this. He tapped a message to his assistant. Move next week's calls. I'm meeting a kid in Illinois. The decision wasn't purely sentimental. Elon had spent his career chasing moonshots, ideas so audacious that most people dismissed them as impossible. But moonshots didn't always involve rockets or Mars colonization. Sometimes, they were about changing one person's world in a way that rippled outward. Later that night, Elon joined a conference call with a few of his top engineers. "Thanks for hopping on," he said, leaning into the camera. "I need your help with something outside our usual scope." The engineers, accustomed to Elon's unpredictable ideas, nodded attentively. "There's a boy, Ethan Parker, who's sent me a design for a new type of wheelchair. It's ambitious, but it has potential. I want us to take a closer look and see if we can help him bring it to life." A few raised eyebrows appeared on the screen, but no one questioned him outright. Elon's track record of pursuing unconventional projects spoke for itself. One engineer, Maria, broke the silence. "Do you have the specs? We'll need to assess the feasibility before we can commit resources." "I'll send you his sketches," Elon said, "but this isn't just about feasibility. It's about possibility. Ethan's work is raw, but the vision is there. Let's treat it the way we treat a prototype for any other breakthrough product." Maria nodded, and the others followed suit. As the call ended, Elon felt a flicker of excitement, the kind he used to feel when SpaceX was just a scrappy startup launching rockets with salvage parts. Ethan's dream was a long shot, sure, but so was reusable space travel. The next morning, Elon reviewed the arrangements for his trip to Illinois. He instructed his team to keep the visit low-key. No media, no fanfare. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It was personal. Later that afternoon, he sat with his youngest son, XAEA-12, who was playing with a set of magnetic building blocks on the floor. Elon watched him for a moment, marveling at the way children saw the world. Not through the lens of limitation, but endless possibility. "Hey, X," Elon said, sitting cross-legged beside him. His son looked up, a curious tilt to his head. "Do you think," Elon continued, picking up a block, "that you can build anything you imagine?" XAEA-12 nodded solemnly, as if the answer was obvious. Elon chuckled softly. "You're right. Anything's possible." That evening, he received a follow-up from his assistant confirming the meeting with Ethan. Elon replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji, then leaned back in his chair, staring out the window. He thought about the vastness of space, the challenges of saving Earth's environment, and the dreams of a boy in a small Illinois town. They all felt interconnected, each a reminder that no dream, no matter how small, should be dismissed. Next week, he would meet Ethan, and together, they would chase a new kind of moonshot. The days leading up to the meeting felt like a whirlwind for Ethan. The news that Elon Musk wanted to meet him spread quickly within his small circle of family and friends. His mom, while thrilled, couldn't help but worry. "Ethan, are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked one evening as they prepared dinner. "Ready? Mom, I've been dreaming about this forever," Ethan exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "This is Elon Musk we're talking about. If anyone can help me, it's him." She smiled softly, her hands busy slicing vegetables. "I just don't want you to be disappointed, sweetheart. Sometimes, even the best ideas take time." "I know," Ethan said, his tone more serious now. "But even if nothing comes of it, just meeting him will be worth it." Over the next few days, Ethan worked tirelessly to refine his sketches and prepare for the meeting. He wanted to make the best impression possible, so he studied everything he could about Elon's past projects, from Tesla's early struggles to SpaceX's groundbreaking rocket launches. In his room, the walls now seemed more alive than ever, covered with updated blueprints and inspirational quotes he had written on sticky notes. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. His favorite, though, was one he'd heard Elon say in an interview. "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds aren't in your favor." The night before the meeting, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind a blur of excitement and nerves. What would Elon be like in person? Would he be impressed by the designs? What if he thought they were just the naive dreams of a kid? At some point, exhaustion took over, and Ethan drifted into a restless sleep filled with dreams of rockets, robots, and a wheelchair that seemed to glide effortlessly over all terrain. Meanwhile, Elon was finalizing his own preparations. He had spent hours reviewing Ethan's designs with his team, who were as intrigued as they were cautious. Some of these concepts are pretty advanced for an 11-year-old, Maria, the lead engineer, remarked during a briefing. The kid clearly has an eye for innovation. Elon nodded. Exactly. That's why I want us to take this seriously. This isn't just about helping him. It's about what we can learn from his perspective. The logistics team confirmed the travel arrangements. A private jet to Illinois, followed by a short drive to Ethan's home. Elon insisted on keeping the visit quiet, much to the dismay of his PR team, who saw the potential for a great media story. This isn't for the cameras, Elon had said firmly. It's for Ethan. As the day of the meeting approached, Elon found himself feeling something unusual, a hint of nervousness. He had spoken in front of thousands, faced countless interviews, and pitched impossible ideas to skeptical investors. But this was different. This was personal. The morning of the meeting, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. His mom had laid out his nicest shirt, a crisp blue button-down, and helped him comb his unruly hair. "You look handsome," she said, stepping back to admire him. "Thanks, Mom," Ethan replied, adjusting his glasses nervously. They had set up a space in the living room where Ethan could show his sketches and explain his ideas. A small table held his notebook, laptop, and a few models he had painstakingly assembled. By mid-morning, the house buzzed with nervous energy. Ethan wheeled himself to the window for the 100th time, scanning the street. Then, he saw it. A sleek black car pulling up in front of their modest home. His heart raced as the door opened, and there he was, Elon Musk, stepping out in his signature understated style. A simple blazer, jeans, and a curious smile. Ethan's mom opened the door, her own nervousness evident. "Mr. Musk," she greeted him warmly. "It's an honor to have you here." "Please, call me Elon," he said with a casual wave. "And the honor's mine. I've been looking forward to this." Ethan rolled forward, his face a mixture of awe and determination. "Hi, Mr. Musk," he said, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. Elon crouched slightly to meet Ethan at eye level, extending a hand. "Ethan Parker," he said with a grin, "I've been hearing a lot about you. Let's see what you've got." In that moment, the room seemed to shrink, leaving just the two of them, the boy with a dream and the man with the means to make it real. Ethan led Elon to his display, his nerves giving way to excitement as he began explaining his designs. For the first time, his ideas weren't just floating in his head or scribbled on paper. They were alive, shared with someone who could help turn them into reality. And as Elon listened, nodding thoughtfully, Ethan felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope that anything was possible. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he flipped open his sketchbook, but the enthusiasm in his voice never wavered. "This," he began, pointing to a detailed blueprint, "is my concept for an adaptive wheelchair. It's lightweight, modular, and can be customized for kids like me who need more independence." Elon leaned in, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. The sketch was impressive, not just for its creativity but for its practicality. The frame design was sleek and modern, and the integration of robotic arms for object manipulation showed a keen understanding of engineering principles. "I thought about using carbon fiber for the frame," Ethan continued, "because it's strong but light. The motors could be powered by a compact battery system, maybe something like Tesla's energy cells, and the control system would adapt to the user's movement patterns over time." "Interesting," Elon said, nodding. "How did you come up with this design?" Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. "I guess I just got tired of feeling stuck. The chairs most kids like me use. They're bulky, hard to maneuver, and they make you feel more disabled than you really are. I wanted to create something that feels empowering, not limiting." Elon smiled. "That's exactly how great ideas start, solving problems that matter to you. Do you have any prototypes?" Ethan gestured to a small model on the table. It was made of Lego pieces, cardboard, and wires, a rudimentary representation of his idea. "It's not much," he admitted, "but it helps me visualize the mechanics." Elon picked up the model carefully, turning it in his hands. Despite its humble construction, he could see the thought and effort that had gone into it. "This is more than not much," he said. "You've done what most people don't, taken an idea and made it tangible. That's the hardest step." Ethan's face lit up at the compliment. "So, what do you think? Is it possible?" Elon chuckled softly. "Ethan, if I've learned one thing in my career, it's that possible is a moving target. Your design has potential. With the right resources and team, I think we can make it work." Ethan's heart soared. For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "But," Elon continued, "we'll need to refine this a lot. Engineering something like this isn't easy, and there will be setbacks. Are you ready for that?" Ethan nodded without hesitation. "I've been ready for setbacks my whole life. I just need someone to give me a chance." Elon's grin widened. "Good answer." For the next hour, Ethan and Elon dove deep into the design. Ethan showed Elon his notes on potential challenges, how to handle weight distribution, power efficiency, and user interface. Elon listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or suggestions. "What about the control system?" Elon asked. "You mentioned adapting to user movements. How would you implement that?" "I was thinking about machine learning," Ethan said, his voice gaining confidence. "The chair could track patterns in how the user moves, like which arm they use more or how they navigate turns, and adjust over time. I read about something similar in one of your Tesla patents." Elon raised an eyebrow. "You've been reading Tesla patents?" Ethan flushed. "Yeah, a few. They're online, so I thought I could learn from them." Elon laughed, clearly impressed. "Smart kid." By the time they wrapped up, Ethan felt like he was walking, or rather, rolling on air. As they moved to the kitchen for a quick break, Ethan's mom poured coffee for Elon and handed Ethan a glass of orange juice. "Thank you for coming," she said to Elon, her voice soft but earnest. "You have no idea what this means to him." Elon shook his head. "Actually, I think I do. And you should be proud of him. Ethan's got something special. Not just the ideas, but the drive to make them happen." Ethan's mom smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "He gets that from his dad," she said quietly, glancing at a framed photo on the counter. Ethan's gaze followed hers, landing on the image of his late father. It was a bittersweet moment, but one that filled him with renewed determination. As Elon prepared to leave, he turned to Ethan. "Here's what we're going to do. I'll have my engineering team reach out to you next week. We'll work together on refining the design, and if it's viable, we'll prototype it." "Sound good?" "Sounds amazing," Ethan exclaimed, barely able to contain his excitement. Elon extended his hand, and Ethan shook it firmly. "Thank you, Mr. Musk," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "Call me Elon," he replied with a wink. "And thank you for reminding me why I got into this business in the first place." As the car pulled away from the curb, Ethan sat by the window, his heart racing with possibilities. For the first time, his dream didn't feel like a far-off fantasy. It felt real, tangible, and closer than ever. This was just the beginning. Ethan could hardly sleep that night. His mind replayed every moment of his meeting with Elon Musk, from the handshake at the door to the in-depth discussion about his designs. By the time morning rolled around, Ethan was already at his desk, sketching out refinements to his blueprint based on Elon's feedback. "Modular motors," Ethan muttered to himself as he doodled in his notebook. "If they're interchangeable, they'll be easier to repair." His mom peeked into the room, balancing a plate of toast and eggs. "You didn't even come down for breakfast," she teased. "I figured I'd bring it to you before you forgot to eat entirely." Ethan grinned sheepishly. "Thanks, Mom. I can't stop thinking about everything Elon said yesterday. This could really happen." She sat on the edge of his bed, watching him. "I know it's exciting, honey, but remember to take breaks. Big dreams take time." "I know," Ethan said, his eyes never leaving the page. "But this isn't just a dream anymore. It's a plan." By midweek, Ethan received an email from one of Elon's engineers, Maria Gomez. Her tone was professional but warm, and she included a list of questions about his design. "Hi, Ethan. Elon shared your wheelchair design with our team, and I have to say, we're impressed. Before we dive in, I'd like to clarify a few things about the mechanics and intended functionality. Could we set up a video call to discuss? Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had never been on a professional call before, let alone with someone from Tesla. He quickly replied, agreeing to a time and spending the rest of the day preparing. When the time came for the video call, Ethan wore the same blue button-down he'd worn when meeting Elon. He wheeled himself in front of his laptop, adjusting the camera until it perfectly framed his desk and the sketches he had laid out. "Hi, Ethan." Maria greeted him warmly when the call started. She was a woman in her late 30s with dark, curly hair and a confident, approachable demeanor. "It's great to finally meet you." "You too," Ethan replied, his voice tinged with excitement. Maria dove right into the questions. "I love the idea of using machine learning for adaptive controls. Have you thought about how the sensors would be placed to collect movement data?" Ethan pulled up a diagram. "I was thinking here, on the armrests. They track how the user pushes or pulls to steer. I also want to add sensors near the footrests for additional input." "That's clever," Maria said, nodding. "And for the power source, do you have a preference for the battery type?" Ethan hesitated. "I've read about lithium-ion batteries, but I'm not sure if they're the best choice for something this small." "They could work," Maria said, "but we might explore solid-state batteries. They're smaller and safer for kids to use. I'll have the team run some tests." The call lasted nearly an hour, and by the end of it, Ethan felt both exhilarated and slightly overwhelmed. Maria had given him a lot to think about, but her encouragement was palpable. "You're doing great, Ethan," she said before signing off. "Most adults don't have this level of vision and focus. Keep at it, and we'll make something amazing together." The next few weeks were a blur of collaboration. Ethan exchanged emails with Maria and her team almost daily, refining every aspect of the wheelchair design. They sent him technical diagrams, and he responded with questions or suggestions. At school, Ethan's friends began to notice his distraction during lunch breaks. "Ethan, you're zoning out again," his best friend Jake teased one day. "Let me guess, space robots?" "Not this time," Ethan said with a grin, "but close. I'm working with Elon Musk's team on a wheelchair project." Jake nearly choked on his sandwich. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" Ethan nodded, pulling out his notebook to show Jake the latest sketches. "This is insane," Jake said, flipping through the pages. "You're going to be famous, dude." Ethan shrugged, his smile modest. "It's not about being famous. It's about making something that helps people." Meanwhile, at Tesla's engineering lab, Maria and her team were making progress. They had built a rough prototype of Ethan's design and were testing its basic functions. Elon stopped by the lab one afternoon to check in. "How's it going?" he asked, inspecting the prototype. Maria smiled. "It's going better than expected. Ethan's ideas are solid, and his adaptability is impressive. We've got a long way to go, but this could be a game changer." Elon nodded, pleased. "Good. Let's keep pushing, and make sure Ethan stays involved in every step. He's the heart of this project." Late one evening, Ethan received an email from Elon himself. "Hi, Ethan. I wanted to personally thank you for your hard work. It's rare to see someone so young tackle such a big challenge, and you're doing an incredible job. Keep pushing, and remember, every great invention starts with a crazy idea. Elon." Ethan read the email 3 times, his chest swelling with pride. For the first time in his life, he didn't just feel like a kid with big dreams. He felt like a part of something bigger, something that could change the world. This was no longer just a design on paper. It was becoming real. Ethan was riding high on the momentum of his collaboration with Tesla's team, but the real challenges were about to begin. The first hint of trouble came during a video call with Maria and her team. "Ethan, we've hit a snag," Maria admitted, her brow furrowed. "The prototype is struggling with stability when it moves at higher speeds. The current motor configuration isn't distributing weight evenly, and it's causing tipping issues." Ethan frowned, absorbing the news. Could it be because the battery placement is too centralized? Maybe we could distribute the weight along the base frame instead? "That's a possibility," Maria replied. "But shifting the battery affects wiring and power efficiency. It's a domino effect. Fixing one problem creates another." Ethan nodded, scribbling notes. Okay, so what if we tried smaller batteries distributed across the frame? Would that help with the weight issue without compromising power? Maria smiled. That's definitely worth exploring. I'll have the team run some simulations. The setback rattled Ethan more than he wanted to admit. For the first time, he felt the weight of the project pressing down on him. The design wasn't just a school assignment. It was a real engineering challenge with real-world stakes. He spent the rest of the day poring over his sketches and notes, searching for solutions. Hours passed, and when his mom called him for dinner, he barely looked up. "Ethan," she said gently, stepping into his room, "you've been at this all day. Take a break." "I can't," he said, his voice tight. "This has to work, Mom. People are counting on me." She knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "You're doing amazing, Ethan. But even Elon Musk didn't build Tesla overnight. Give yourself some grace, okay?" Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. He knew she was right, but the pressure to succeed was relentless. The next day brought more complications. Maria sent over the simulation results, and they weren't promising. "The distributed battery concept solves the weight issue," she explained in her email, "but it adds complexity to the wiring system. It's not impossible to implement, but it'll require significant adjustments to the design." Ethan stared at the email, frustration bubbling inside him. Why couldn't anything just work? His mood carried over into school, where even Jake noticed. "Dude, what's wrong?" Jake asked during lunch. "You've been staring at that same sandwich for 5 minutes. "It's this project," Ethan admitted. "Every time we fix one problem, another one pops up. It's like, I don't know if I'm good enough to pull this off." Jake gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "You're literally working with Elon Musk's team. If that doesn't prove you're good enough, I don't know what does." Ethan smiled weakly. "Thanks, man. I want this to be perfect." That evening, Ethan decided to clear his head with some late-night reading. He pulled a book off his shelf, Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future by Ashley Vance. As he flipped through the pages, a quote from Elon caught his eye. "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." Ethan read the words again, letting them sink in. Maybe failure wasn't something to fear. Maybe it was just part of the process. Inspired, he grabbed his sketchbook and started brainstorming again. This time, he focused on simplifying the wiring system while keeping the distributed battery design. He knew it wouldn't be perfect, but it didn't have to be, not yet. The next day, Ethan emailed Maria with his revised ideas. "I was thinking," he wrote, "what if we used modular battery packs connected through a central hub? It might add a bit of bulk, but it could simplify the wiring and make the system easier to maintain." Maria responded quickly. "I like where your head's at. Let's test it." Over the next few weeks, the team iterated on the design, testing, and tweaking with each new prototype. There were more setbacks, motors overheating, sensors misfiring, but each one taught Ethan something valuable. One particularly frustrating day, Ethan received an unexpected call from Elon. "Ethan," Elon began, "I heard about the motor issue. Tough break." "Yeah," Ethan said, trying to hide his disappointment. "We're working on it." "Good. Keep working on it," Elon said firmly. "You know, when we started Tesla, everyone said electric cars were a joke. We had 100 reasons to quit, but we didn't. You know why?" Ethan shook his head. "Because we believed in the mission. And if you believe in yours, you'll find a way. Problems are just opportunities in disguise." Ethan couldn't help but smile. "Thanks, Elon. I needed that." "Anytime," Elon said. "Now, go solve that motor problem." By the time the team completed the next prototype, Ethan had gained a new perspective on the process. Setbacks weren't failures, they were stepping stones. As he watched the latest test run on a video call with Maria, he felt a surge of pride. The wheelchair wasn't perfect yet, but it was closer than ever. "We're getting there," Maria said, grinning. "Yeah," Ethan replied, his confidence renewed. "We are." The weeks following Elon's motivational call were transformative for Ethan. He was no longer intimidated by the challenges. He saw them as puzzles waiting to be solved. With Maria's team tackling the technical hurdles, Ethan turned his attention to the wheelchair's user experience. How can we make it intuitive? He wondered aloud one evening, sketching furiously in his notebook. He imagined sitting in the chair for the first time, thinking of every movement a child like him might instinctively make. Ethan knew from experience that children with mobility challenges often had to learn complicated systems just to navigate their environment. His chair had to be different. It had to feel natural. The breakthrough came one Saturday morning. Ethan was tinkering with an old remote-controlled car he had taken apart years ago. As he examined the tiny controller, an idea struck him. What if the joystick wasn't a joystick? He mused, holding the controller up to the light. What if it was more like a touchpad? He quickly sketched the idea in his notebook, a sleek, pressure-sensitive touchpad integrated into the armrest. The pad would allow users to glide their fingers in the direction they wanted to move, mimicking the natural motion of pointing or gesturing. Excited, Ethan emailed Maria with his concept. I've been thinking about making the controls more intuitive. Check out this idea for a touchpad. It could reduce the learning curve for younger users and make the chair feel more responsive. Maria replied within the hour. Ethan, this is genius. Let me run it by our design team. We'll need to test how precise the sensors can be, but this could be a game changer. Meanwhile, word of Ethan's project began to spread. His teachers and classmates at school were amazed by the updates he shared during breaks. Even his principal, Mrs. Carter, called him into her office one afternoon. Ethan, she said with a warm smile, I've heard about the incredible work you're doing with Elon Musk's team. We're so proud of you. Thank you, Mrs. Carter, Ethan said, a little embarrassed by the attention. We'd like to feature your story in our school newsletter, she continued. And if you're up for it, maybe you could give a presentation to the other students about your project. It might inspire them to dream big too. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't used to speaking in front of large groups, but the idea of inspiring others appealed to him. I'll think about it, he said. At Tesla, the engineering team was just as energized by Ethan's touchpad concept. Maria arranged for a prototype to be integrated into the latest wheelchair model, and they began testing it immediately. The results were promising. The touchpad was more responsive than a traditional joystick and allowed for finer control. The team even discovered that with a little software tweaking, they could program custom gestures, double taps for speed boosts, swipes for directional changes, and more. Elon stopped by the lab to check on the progress. How's Ethan's idea working out? He asked, inspecting the prototype. Maria grinned. Better than we expected. It's simple, elegant, and intuitive. Honestly, I'm surprised no one thought of this before. That's the power of fresh perspectives, Elon said. Sometimes it takes a kid to show us how to think outside the box. One evening, as Ethan was finalizing a presentation for his school, he received a surprise video call from Maria. We've got something to show you, she said, her excitement palpable. The screen switched to a live feed of the latest wheelchair prototype being tested by a child at Tesla's headquarters. The boy, around 7 years old, was beaming as he effortlessly glided across the room, using the touchpad to steer. Look at him go, Maria said. The touchpad works like a charm. He picked it up in minutes. Ethan watched in awe. For the first time, he saw his vision come to life, not just as a machine, but as a tool that could genuinely improve someone's life. That's amazing, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Maria nodded. And it's all thanks to you. This is just the beginning, Ethan. We're on to something special here. The next day at school, Ethan decided he was ready to share his story. During an assembly, he rolled onto the stage, a mixture of nerves and excitement buzzing in his chest. Hi, everyone, he began, his voice steady. I want to tell you about a project I've been working on, a wheelchair designed to be easier and more fun for kids like me to use. He explained the journey so far, from sketching ideas in his room to collaborating with Elon Musk's team. He even shared a video of the prototype in action, drawing cheers and applause from the crowd. Dreams aren't just for grown-ups, he concluded. Sometimes all it takes is one crazy idea and a lot of hard work to make a difference. As Ethan wheeled off the stage, his classmates swarmed him with questions and congratulations. For the first time, he felt like more than just the kid in the wheelchair. He was Ethan, the inventor, the dreamer, and the kid making a difference. And he wasn't done yet. Ethan's success with the touchpad design gave the project renewed momentum. But as the team moved forward, they began to realize that innovation came with its own set of challenges. The next hurdle was durability. Maria called Ethan one afternoon with a new concern. "The touchpad is amazing," she admitted, "but it's more delicate than we expected. During testing, we noticed it's prone to scratches and moisture damage. Kids aren't always the gentlest users, and we need this chair to hold up under real-world conditions." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "What if we used a more rugged material? Something like Gorilla Glass, but water-resistant?" "That's a great start," Maria agreed. "But we'll also need to protect the internal sensors from spills. We're exploring sealing the electronics and adding a replaceable protective film." Ethan's mind raced. He jotted down ideas for improvements, thinking about his own childhood and how rough he'd been on his devices. The next week was all about field testing. Tesla arranged for the prototype to be tested by several children with disabilities, all with varying needs and mobility levels. Ethan joined the testing sessions via video call, eager to see how the chair performed in different scenarios. One of the testers, a 10-year-old girl named Lily, had cerebral palsy. She approached the chair hesitantly, but broke into a grin as soon as she tried the touchpad. "This is so cool," she exclaimed, steering the chair in smooth, graceful arcs. But not everything went perfectly. During an outdoor test, another child accidentally ran the chair into a small puddle. The touchpad malfunctioned, and the chair stopped responding. Maria sighed. "Looks like the waterproofing isn't quite there yet." Ethan grimaced, but he refused to be discouraged. "At least we know what to fix now." Later that evening, Ethan and Maria brainstormed solutions. "What if we added a retractable cover for the touchpad?" Ethan suggested. "Something kids could slide over the surface when they're outside or eating." "That's brilliant," Maria said. "And it could be a fun feature too. Maybe we could design it with customizable patterns or colors." The idea took off, and soon the team was working on a retractable cover prototype. Meanwhile, back at school, Ethan's life had taken on a new rhythm. His peers now treated him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Even his teachers seemed to give him a bit more slack on homework, understanding that his evenings were packed with design meetings and testing sessions. Jake, however, kept him grounded. "You know," Jake teased one afternoon, "you're basically famous now. Should I start calling you Will's Gates or something?" Ethan laughed. "How about you just call me Ethan and help me with this science project?" "Fair enough," Jake said, smirking. The wheelchair's testing continued, with improvements being made after each round of feedback. The retractable cover was a hit with the kids, who loved being able to personalize it. Tesla's engineers worked tirelessly to improve the touchpad's durability and responsiveness, while Ethan focused on smaller details, like adding cup holders and storage compartments. But the biggest breakthrough came during a meeting with one of Tesla's AI specialists, Dr. Patel. "We've been thinking about integrating more advanced sensors into the chair," Dr. Patel explained. "What if the wheelchair could anticipate a user's movements and adjust automatically? For instance, if someone's hand trembles while using the touchpad, the chair could compensate to keep them on track." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Like predictive AI?" "Exactly," Dr. Patel said. "We're already working on algorithms for Tesla's self-driving cars. Adapting them for the wheelchair will take some work, but it's definitely possible." Ethan was thrilled by the idea. The prospect of a wheelchair that could adapt to its users' unique needs felt like the ultimate expression of everything he wanted this project to be. The team spent the next few weeks integrating the AI features. It was a painstaking process, but the results were worth it. During a test session, Lily tried the updated prototype and was amazed by how intuitive it felt. "It's like it knows where I want to go before I even move my hand," she said, her face glowing with excitement. Ethan watched her through the screen, feeling a deep sense of pride. Despite the progress, there were still moments of frustration. One evening, Ethan found himself staring at a long list of unresolved issues. The AI occasionally misinterpreted gestures, the retractable cover mechanism jammed under heavy use, and the battery life still wasn't where they wanted it to be. "It's like whack-a-mole," he muttered to himself. "Fix one problem, and 3 more pop up." His mom popped her head into his room. "Everything okay, honey?" Ethan sighed. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like this project is never going to be done. She sat down beside him. You're building something incredible, Ethan. And incredible things take time. Just remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to help people. Her words stuck with him. That night, as he lay in bed, Ethan realized she was right. The goal wasn't perfection. It was impact. The next day, Ethan shared his thoughts with Maria and the team. I think we're getting too caught up in making everything flawless, he said. What matters most is that this chair can change lives. Let's focus on getting it out there and improving it as we go. Maria smiled. I couldn't agree more. Let's prioritize the must-haves and keep the nice-to-haves on the roadmap for future versions. With a clearer focus, the team worked harder than ever, refining the design and preparing for the next big step, introducing the wheelchair to the world. Ethan could feel it. They were on the verge of something extraordinary. The prototype had come a long way. After months of hard work, testing, and relentless fine-tuning, the wheelchair was finally nearing its release. The Tesla team, together with Ethan, had created something truly revolutionary, a chair that could be customized, personalized, and adaptive to its users' needs, all with the power of AI and innovative design. But as the release date approached, Ethan's excitement began to mix with a healthy dose of nerves. Would the world embrace it? Would it really make a difference for kids like him? The morning of the official reveal, Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto was buzzing with energy. The conference room was filled with engineers, designers, and executives. Maria stood at the head of the table, ready to present the final product. Ethan sat off to the side, his heart racing. His nerves were on edge. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, the moment when his ideas would meet the world. Elon will be joining us in a few minutes, Maria said, addressing the room. Before we begin, I just want to say that what we've created here is special, not just because of the technology, but because of the people it's for. We've been building something that has the potential to change lives. Ethan smiled at her words, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He kept replaying the feedback from the children who had tested the chair, wondering if it was really enough to make the difference he'd hoped for. When Elon Musk walked into the room, the atmosphere shifted. As always, he exuded an air of calm confidence, but there was something in his eyes today that made him seem even more focused than usual. Elon, Maria greeted him, standing up. We're just about ready to begin. Ethan is here with us today too. Elon turned to Ethan with a smile. Ethan, it's great to see you. We couldn't have done this without you. Ethan felt his face flush. Thanks, Mr. Musk. It's been an honor working with everyone. Elon took a seat at the table, and Maria clicked a button on her laptop. The screen flickered to life, displaying a short video of the wheelchair in action. Children using the touchpad to navigate, effortlessly steering the chair through obstacles, customizing their experiences, and interacting with the AI features. The room fell silent as everyone watched. The video was a testament to the countless hours of collaboration and innovation that had gone into the project. Ethan felt his chest swell with pride as he saw his work on display for the world to see. When the video ended, Elon looked at the group, a slight smile on his lips. This is incredible, he said. You've managed to take something that hasn't changed much in decades and turn it into something that's truly revolutionary. Maria nodded. The wheelchair isn't just a mobility tool anymore. It's a platform for independence, for choice, for dignity. Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he watched the team react to Elon's approval. His dreams were no longer just visions in his notebook. They were tangible, real, and about to be shared with the world. Later that day, the product launch took place. It was streamed live to thousands of people around the globe. Ethan stood beside Elon as they introduced the wheelchair to the public for the first time, explaining its features and the story behind its creation. The room was packed with journalists, advocates for disabilities, and families who had waited for something like this for years. Today, we're not just unveiling a product, Elon said into the microphone. We're unveiling a new world for children and adults with mobility challenges. A world where technology adapts to you, not the other way around. As he spoke, Ethan felt a weight settle in his chest. This wasn't just about a new wheelchair. It was about giving kids like him a chance at a life of independence. It was about changing perceptions and empowering others to see the potential in people with disabilities. The first few questions came from reporters, and Elon fielded them with his usual calm. Then, to Ethan's surprise, one reporter asked, "Ethan, how does it feel to have been such a big part of this project?" Ethan paused, taking a breath. For a moment, he wasn't sure what to say. But then he remembered his mom's words. "This doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to help people." "It feels amazing," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the flutter of nerves. "This wheelchair, it's not just about a chair. It's about giving kids like me the chance to move freely, to have control over where we go and how we get there. That's something I've always dreamed of." The reporter smiled. "And what's next for you, Ethan?" Ethan's heart raced. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He wasn't done. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I've learned that one idea, one small change, can make a huge difference. So I'm just getting started." The audience erupted in applause, and Ethan couldn't help but smile. The next few weeks flew by. Orders for the new wheelchair poured in from all over the world. Families were overjoyed by the new independence it provided their children. Ethan began receiving letters from parents and children alike, thanking him for making their lives easier. But even as he reveled in the success, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. He had always dreamed of making an impact, and now that dream had turned into something real. But there was still so much more to be done. In a quiet moment one evening, as Ethan sat at his desk sketching new ideas for future models, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon. "Ethan, I have a feeling this is just the start of something huge. Keep thinking big. We're excited to see where you take this next." Ethan grinned. He was ready for whatever came next. Because now, he knew that anything was possible. The world had taken notice. The new wheelchair was making headlines everywhere, from tech blogs to disability advocacy forums. Ethan couldn't believe how quickly it had gone from a concept on his notebook to a life-changing reality. Every day, more and more families were discovering the possibilities it offered. But with success came new challenges and new responsibilities. Elon Musk had always been someone who pushed the boundaries of what was possible, but now, he was looking to Ethan for the next big step. Tesla wasn't just thinking about one revolutionary product anymore. They were thinking about an entire movement. One afternoon, a few weeks after the launch, Ethan received an unexpected invitation. It was from Elon himself. The email read, "Ethan, I'd like to meet with you. I have an idea that could change everything, and I want you to be a part of it. Let me know when you're free." Ethan felt a surge of excitement and trepidation. He'd had countless video calls and meetings with Elon, but this was different. It felt like something big was coming. He quickly responded, arranging to meet with Elon at Tesla's headquarters. A few days later, he found himself walking through the sleek, modern building once again, his heart pounding in his chest. Elon was waiting for him in a private conference room, a large table between them. There was no formal presentation, no fancy slides, just the two of them, seated across from each other. Elon gestured to a chair. "Ethan, you've done something incredible," Elon began, his voice calm but filled with an energy that Ethan couldn't quite place. "But I think we can do more. We're not just talking about one wheelchair here. We're talking about a whole new way of thinking about mobility. A new kind of transportation for those who have been forgotten." Ethan furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of what Elon was saying. "You mean expand on the wheelchair? Create something bigger?" "Exactly," Elon said, leaning forward. "But it's not just about a wheelchair. I'm talking about a network, a movement that integrates transportation, health, and even home environments into one seamless experience. Think about a world where a child's wheelchair is more than just a chair. It's a part of their entire ecosystem. It connects with everything around them, from their school to their home to their medical devices." Ethan blinked, the weight of Elon's vision starting to settle in. "So, you're saying you want to create a whole new system, a fully integrated, smart world for people with disabilities?" Elon nodded. "Exactly. It would be a new frontier in assistive technology. A world where people with disabilities aren't just users of technology, they're connected to it in a way that gives them real power and independence." Ethan felt a rush of excitement mixed with a touch of anxiety. This was even bigger than he'd imagined. But he also knew that if anyone could make it happen, it was Elon and the Tesla team. "I'm in," Ethan said, his voice firm. "Let's do it." Over the following months, the project expanded exponentially. Tesla's engineers and AI specialists began working on new concepts for mobility that went far beyond just the wheelchair. They were developing smart systems that could sync with home automation, allowing users to control lights, doors, and even appliances directly from their chair. The idea was to create a seamless integration of life and technology, making the world more accessible for those with disabilities. Ethan was involved in every step, traveling between Tesla's headquarters, his school, and testing sites. His life had taken on a new rhythm, one that balanced his passion for innovation with his commitment to ensuring that the products always put people's needs first. Despite the hectic schedule, Ethan was finding moments of calm. Late nights in his room, he would still sketch ideas in his notebook. He thought about the future, not just his own, but the future of the children who were already using his design. What would their world look like in 5 or 10 years? What kind of possibilities would exist for them? One afternoon, as he sat in a meeting with Maria and some of the lead engineers, a new idea struck him. What if we could create a system that doesn't just track mobility, but also monitors health, like real-time tracking of things like heart rate, oxygen levels, and posture? Maria looked thoughtful. "We're already incorporating some basic health features, but real-time monitoring, that's a huge leap." "I know," Ethan said, "but think about the possibilities. It could alert caregivers or family members if someone's health is at risk, or even make adjustments to the chair automatically to help them stay comfortable." The team jumped on the idea, quickly pivoting to explore health monitoring sensors that could be embedded into the chair. It was an ambitious project, but it felt right. As the months passed, the scale of the project grew. What had started as a single, innovative wheelchair was becoming the cornerstone of something much larger, an ecosystem of products and technologies designed to empower those with disabilities. Ethan, Maria, and the Tesla team worked together on the next phase of development, creating an app that would allow users to fully personalize their experience. The app would sync with the wheelchair, health monitors, and even the smart home system, allowing users to customize their environments and interact with technology like never before. Ethan spent hours testing the app, making sure that it was intuitive and user-friendly. He often called up the kids who had tested the initial wheelchair model, asking for their feedback on the new features. They were thrilled by the advancements and eager to share their thoughts. "Ethan, one of the kids, Jack, said during a test call, 'This is amazing. It's like my wheelchair is becoming my best friend. It does what I need before I even have to ask.'" Ethan smiled, knowing they were on the right track. But even as they moved forward, he kept thinking about how far they had come. This wasn't just about a product, it was about changing lives. It was about creating a future where people with disabilities weren't just participating in the world, but shaping it. And that future was just beginning. The days were getting longer as the project continued to grow. Every time Ethan thought they had reached a milestone, there was always another challenge, another feature to add, another layer of complexity to solve. But the excitement that came with each breakthrough kept him motivated. More and more, he was seeing the impact of the work they were doing, not just on the kids who used the new wheelchair, but on the community as a whole. One afternoon, after another long day of meetings and tests, Ethan sat in his room at home, staring at the drawing board. His notebook was filled with sketches of futuristic wheelchairs, mobility devices, and home automation systems. It had always been his dream to design something that could help people like him, and now, it seemed like that dream was unfolding right before his eyes. His phone buzzed with a text message from his mom. "Ethan, we're getting a lot of messages from parents about how the new wheelchair is changing their lives. Some of them are even saying their kids feel like they finally have the freedom they've always wanted. You're doing something incredible." Ethan's heart swelled as he read the message. These were the kinds of messages he had hoped for, but never expected to come so quickly. It was the kind of feedback that made all the long hours worth it. But there was still more to be done. Tesla was preparing for another round of updates to the product, a new version that would include even more customization features, new AI-driven health tools, and improved interfaces. This was the big push that would take their project to the next level. Ethan was ready to dive in, but he was also aware that they needed to stay grounded. After all, this was about people, real families with real needs. Ethan, Maria called him one evening during a team meeting. I've been thinking about what you said last week, the idea of the wheelchair becoming part of a larger ecosystem. I think you're right. We can't just stop here. Let's think about the future. What comes next? Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath. Well, we've already started talking about integrating health monitoring into the system, but we need to go further. What if the chair could track things like sleep patterns, stress levels, and even help users with their emotional well-being? Maria raised an eyebrow. That's a lot, but it's exactly the kind of thinking we need. We're not just designing a wheelchair anymore, Ethan continued. We're designing a tool that helps people live their best lives. It's about empowering them with information and tools that give them control over their health, their comfort, and their future. The team was silent for a moment, absorbing Ethan's words. The idea of creating a holistic system, one that could integrate mental health, physical health, and mobility, was revolutionary. It would require new partnerships, new research, and new technology. But the more Ethan thought about it, the more convinced he became that this was the right direction. A few weeks later, Ethan found himself presenting the new vision to Elon Musk. It wasn't just about a wheelchair anymore. It was about creating a fully integrated system for health, mobility, and well-being. Ethan began, standing before him in the sleek Tesla conference room. I believe that what we're building here could change the way the world views disabilities. But we need to go beyond just mobility. I want to create a system that empowers users in every way possible, physically, mentally, emotionally. Elon listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. He'd always been a visionary, but Ethan's idea seemed to strike a chord. So, you're saying that the chair becomes the center of the user's life. It connects everything, from their health data to their environment. It's not just a product. It's a lifestyle. Exactly, Ethan said. And it's a lifestyle that prioritizes independence. We're giving users more than just mobility. We're giving them the tools they need to thrive, physically and emotionally. Elon leaned back in his chair, a small smile on his face. I like it. Let's move forward with this. But we need to make sure it's scalable. We're not just designing for the present. We're designing for the future. The next phase of the project began with a focus on research. Tesla's engineers, along with a team of doctors, psychologists, and accessibility experts, dove deep into the world of health data. They explored everything from heart rate variability to sleep cycles, emotional responses, and even cognitive patterns. The goal was to create an AI-powered system that could learn from the user's daily habits and adjust accordingly, ensuring maximum comfort, safety, and well-being. Ethan spent countless hours with the team, testing prototypes, discussing new ideas, and considering the ways in which this new system could make a tangible difference in the lives of its users. He worked with children who had varying disabilities, observing how they interacted with the technology and fine-tuning it to meet their specific needs. In one of the test sessions, a young girl named Lily, who had cerebral palsy, sat in the new prototype. As she tested the chair's adjustments, she smiled brightly. "It feels like my body isn't fighting the chair anymore," she said. "It's like the chair is learning from me." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment he had hoped for. The chair wasn't just a tool. It was an extension of Lily herself. It was adapting, learning, and providing comfort in a way he had never thought possible. It was this kind of feedback that fueled Ethan's drive to push forward. He wasn't just designing for the present. He was designing for a future where every child, every adult, every person with a disability could live with dignity, independence, and the confidence that their needs would always be met. And for the first time, Ethan truly believed it could happen. As the weeks passed, the project that had started as a small idea in Ethan's mind was beginning to take shape into something far larger and more meaningful than anyone had initially imagined. The team at Tesla had been working relentlessly, refining the new system and integrating the health monitoring features, AI customization, and mobility systems that would revolutionize the way people with disabilities interacted with their environment. The first full-scale prototype was ready. It was sleek, sophisticated, and, most importantly, user-centered. The wheelchair wasn't just a mobility device anymore. It was a lifeline, a hub that connected everything in a person's world, from health monitoring to environmental control and beyond. Ethan was sitting in a meeting room with Maria, Elon, and the rest of the development team when Elon spoke up, his voice filled with excitement. All right, everyone, we're about to do something no one has ever done before. This is not just a product launch. It's the beginning of something transformative. Let's make sure we do it right. Ethan's pulse quickened. The launch was going to be huge. It wasn't just about unveiling a new product. It was about changing the way people with disabilities lived. He had been working for months, but now it was all coming to a head. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the culmination of years of work, and the lives of so many families were about to change forever. The marketing team had crafted a powerful campaign. The tagline, "Empowering Independence, One Revolution at a Time," was bold, but fitting. The launch event would be broadcast worldwide, with a live demonstration of the chair's capabilities. Ethan, who had always been more comfortable behind the scenes, found himself at the forefront of the presentation. His voice would narrate the story of the chair, the system, and the movement that was just beginning. On the day of the launch, Tesla's headquarters buzzed with energy. The event was being held in a large auditorium, filled with press, industry leaders, and most importantly, the families who had been waiting for this moment for so long. The room was filled with excitement, but there was a palpable sense of anticipation. A collective breath held as the countdown to the unveiling began. Ethan stood backstage, his nerves dancing in his stomach. Maria gave him a reassuring smile. "You've got this. Remember, this is for them," she said, referring to the families and children whose lives would be transformed by this new technology. When the curtains parted, the audience was greeted by the first fully functioning version of the new wheelchair, a sleek, futuristic design that moved effortlessly across the stage. The integrated AI system hummed softly as it adjusted to the needs of the person in the chair. Ethan stepped onto the stage, his heart racing, but his voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "today marks a new chapter in the journey toward accessibility and independence for those with disabilities. This is not just a wheelchair. It's a system, a fully integrated ecosystem designed to empower its user in ways we've never seen before." He gestured to the chair, and the audience watched as the chair seamlessly adjusted to its user, a young boy named Leo, who had been part of the testing team for the new system. Leo was grinning ear to ear as the chair responded to his movements, his face lit up with a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. "This chair," Ethan continued, "is not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about empowering its user to live independently, to have control over their environment, and to access their health data in real time. With this system, we are giving people the tools they need to live their lives to the fullest." As Ethan spoke, the audience watched the chair adjust its settings to accommodate Leo's needs. His heart rate was monitored, the chair shifted to help him maintain perfect posture, and it synced with his home smart system, dimming the lights and opening the door as Leo approached. The AI adjusted the settings in real time, optimizing his comfort, health, and mobility all at once. The crowd erupted into applause. But it wasn't just the chair's design that impressed them. It was the heart behind it. The story of how a young boy, just like Leo, had turned his idea into a life-changing reality had captivated everyone in the room. Ethan was no longer just a young inventor. He had become the face of a movement, one that was pushing the boundaries of what technology could do for people with disabilities. The speeches and demonstrations continued, but for Ethan, the real moment of triumph came when he met with some of the families who had come to witness the launch. Leo's parents, along with a few other families, approached him after the event, their eyes filled with gratitude. "You've given our children the world," Leo's mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "You've given them the power to be free, to live without limitations." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. "It's not just me," he replied softly. "It's all of us. We're building this together." The sense of accomplishment he felt in that moment was unlike anything he had experienced before. He had helped create something that was going to change lives for generations to come. But even as the applause continued, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. As the event wrapped up, Elon pulled Ethan aside. "You've done something incredible," he said. "But remember, this is just the first step. We're going to keep pushing forward. The world isn't ready for everything we have planned." Ethan nodded, a sense of determination settling in. The journey was far from over. There was so much more to do, so many more lives to impact. But he was ready. The dream they had set in motion was just beginning to take flight, and Ethan knew, with all his heart, that this was only the start of a much bigger revolution. The excitement from the launch lingered in the air for weeks. The world had been introduced to the next-generation mobility solution, and its impact was nothing short of revolutionary. Families were sending messages of gratitude. Children were experiencing newfound independence, and the community was beginning to see the possibilities that technology, when combined with compassion, could unlock. But for Ethan, the work had only just begun. The first few weeks after the launch had been a whirlwind. Orders for the new wheelchairs flooded in from all over the world. Tesla's production lines were running around the clock to keep up with demand, and the company had set up a dedicated team to continue improving the product based on user feedback. Ethan, along with Maria and the design team, worked tirelessly to ensure that the technology was not just meeting expectations but exceeding them. There were challenges, of course. The sheer scale of the project was immense, and as the technology grew, so did the complexity of maintaining it. New features had to be added to keep the system running smoothly, and as the user base expanded, so did the diversity of needs. There were children, adults, and elderly people all using the chair in different ways, each with unique requirements. Ethan found himself deep in meetings with the engineering team, discussing software updates, hardware tweaks, and new partnerships. The AI was constantly evolving, learning from its users and becoming smarter every day. But with each innovation came new questions, new obstacles, and new ideas for how they could make the system even better. One afternoon, as Ethan sat in his office, staring at a map of global orders, his phone buzzed with a message from Elon. "Ethan, I want you to meet someone. There's a project I've been working on in parallel with yours. I think it's time we combine forces." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. He had always known that Elon had big ideas, but this felt different. This felt like something that would push them even further. The next day, Ethan flew to California for a meeting with Elon. The Tesla headquarters was buzzing as usual, but there was a sense of purpose in the air. Elon ushered him into a private conference room, where a team of engineers and designers were gathered around a large table. On the screen, there was a detailed presentation of a new project, the Neuralink Mobility Interface. "We've been working on a new neural interface technology," Elon began. "It's still in the early stages, but we believe it could be the next step in creating even more seamless interactions with assistive devices. The potential for integration with your wheelchair system is enormous." Ethan was fascinated. Neuralink, the brain-machine interface technology, had always been something Elon was passionate about, but to think that it could be used in conjunction with the wheelchair system was mind-blowing. "Imagine this," Elon continued. "Instead of using a joystick, buttons, or voice commands, users could control their wheelchairs simply with their thoughts. It would make the experience completely intuitive, like an extension of the body itself." Ethan's mind raced with the possibilities. He could already picture it. No more limitations based on physical movement, no more barriers. Users would be able to control their environment with nothing more than their mind. "Of course, we'd have to test it extensively," Elon added. "But the potential here is limitless." Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering the enormity of the idea. This could be the breakthrough they had been waiting for. It was a game changer, a way to elevate the mobility system beyond anything they had imagined. "I'm in," Ethan said finally, his voice filled with excitement. "This is exactly the kind of innovation I've been dreaming of. Let's make it happen." The next few months were a blur of intense work and collaboration. The Neuralink team and Tesla's mobility division worked side by side, blending their cutting-edge technologies to create a brain-controlled wheelchair interface. Ethan and his team contributed their knowledge of user needs and accessibility, ensuring that the system would not only be groundbreaking but also intuitive and easy to use. The first successful test came sooner than expected. Leo, who had been a key tester for the first generation of the wheelchair, was brought in to help with the neural interface trials. The process was not without challenges, but when Leo was finally able to move the chair simply by thinking about it, without touching a joystick, pressing a button, or giving a verbal command, the room erupted into applause. Leo's face lit up as the chair responded to his thoughts, moving with fluidity and precision. "This is incredible," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "I can finally control it like it's part of me." Ethan couldn't help but smile, his heart swelling with pride. This was it, the moment when the dream truly came alive. The integration of Neuralink's technology had made the impossible possible. Users could now interact with their environment in ways they had never imagined before. But even as they celebrated, Ethan knew there was still much work to be done. The system needed to be refined, made more accessible, and tested with a wider range of users. There were still kinks to iron out and new obstacles to overcome. But this breakthrough was the key to unlocking the future of mobility, and Ethan was determined to see it through. As the Neuralink integration moved forward, the feedback from users was overwhelmingly positive. Children, adults, and elderly people with varying disabilities began using the new system, and their testimonials were heartwarming. Parents sent messages of gratitude, sharing how their children could now interact with the world in ways they never thought possible. It was a ripple effect. The technology had begun to spread hope and change in ways that went beyond what anyone had imagined. For Ethan, the journey was no longer just about creating a new wheelchair. It was about reshaping the future of accessibility, breaking down barriers, and giving people the power to live their lives on their terms. And with each passing day, he felt closer to the dream he had set out to achieve. The dream of a world where everyone, regardless of their physical limitations, could live with independence and dignity. As the months passed, the partnership between Neuralink and Tesla continued to grow. The integration of brain-machine interfaces with mobility technology was still in its early stages, but the results were nothing short of miraculous. The world was watching as this new frontier in accessibility unfolded, with people from all walks of life starting to experience the benefits of the revolutionary technology. And Ethan, once just a young inventor with a vision, had become the driving force behind a global movement for independence and empowerment. With the success of the prototype and the increasing demand for the system, the project had reached a critical juncture. It wasn't just a product launch anymore. It had become a societal shift. People with disabilities were no longer just users of assistive devices. They were now participants in a global transformation. One afternoon, as Ethan sat at his desk in Tesla's headquarters, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Maria. "Ethan, I think you need to see this. We've been getting an overwhelming number of stories from users. Families, schools, workplaces. This technology is having a ripple effect that's much bigger than we expected." Curious, Ethan opened the attached video. It showed a young girl named Lily, who had been born with cerebral palsy, using the chair equipped with the neural interface. The video captured her face lighting up as the chair responded to her thoughts, allowing her to navigate a crowded park, talk to her friends, and even play a game of tag with her peers, all for the first time in her life. Lily's mother was also featured in the video. "When Lily first got the chair, I thought it would be another gadget, another tool to help her get around. But this is different. She's never had the ability to truly control her environment like this. It's changed everything for her. And for our family." Ethan watched the video several times, his emotions welling up inside him. The impact was more profound than he could have imagined. This wasn't just a product. It was an avenue for people to reclaim their independence, to experience life in a way they never thought possible. That evening, Elon invited Ethan to dinner at one of the Tesla campus's private conference rooms. The atmosphere was relaxed, but there was a sense of anticipation hanging in the air. As they sat down to eat, Elon looked at Ethan with a knowing smile. "You've done something incredible here, Ethan," Elon said. "But we're not stopping here, are we?" Ethan shook his head. "No, we're just getting started. There's so much more we can do. This is only the beginning." Elon leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. "Exactly. Imagine if we could expand this system even further. What if we could integrate it into every aspect of a person's life? Home automation, work environments, transportation. What if a person could control every aspect of their day simply by thinking about it?" Ethan's mind raced. The idea was thrilling. "You mean a fully integrated, thought-controlled ecosystem? A world where every device, every tool, responds to a person's intentions?" Yes, Elon said, grinning. Imagine a home where you don't need to lift a finger. The lights adjust to your preferences, the door opens when you approach, the temperature changes as you wish, all with the power of your thoughts. Ethan felt a wave of inspiration hit him. The possibilities were limitless. We could build a network of smart devices that works seamlessly with the chair. It wouldn't just be about mobility. It would be about an entirely new way of living. As the conversation continued, Ethan and Elon began to sketch out the blueprint for this new vision. It would be a massive undertaking, but it felt like the next logical step. If they could integrate the neural interface with home systems, workplaces, and even cities, they could create a world where people with disabilities could fully participate in every aspect of society. It wasn't just about the physical act of moving. It was about reshaping how people interacted with the world. Over the following weeks, Ethan worked with the Neuralink team to develop the infrastructure for this new system. The idea was to create a fully customizable ecosystem that could connect with various smart technologies, allowing users to control everything from household appliances to personal devices with nothing but their thoughts. In parallel, Maria led the team to integrate the system with local communities. They worked with schools, hospitals, and care facilities to ensure that the technology was not only accessible but also useful in real-world settings. The goal was to make the system as inclusive as possible, ensuring that people with disabilities could truly thrive. One day, a year after the initial launch, Ethan stood on stage at a global technology conference. He was about to introduce the next phase of the project, the neurosphere. This new system would allow individuals with disabilities to fully integrate with their surroundings, controlling everything from their environment to their digital devices, all through their neural interface. The audience was filled with executives, investors, and journalists, all eager to see what Ethan and his team had developed. As he stood before the crowd, the weight of the moment settled in. This was not just a product launch. It was the dawn of a new era in accessibility. Ethan took a deep breath, then spoke, his voice steady and confident. Today, we introduce the neurosphere, a fully integrated, thought-controlled ecosystem designed to give every person, regardless of their physical limitations, the ability to control their world. The neurosphere is not just a device. It's a revolution in accessibility. It's the next step in creating a world where everyone has the freedom to live on their terms. As the curtains rose and the first demonstration of the neurosphere unfolded, the audience gasped in amazement. Ethan watched as the technology responded seamlessly to the user's thoughts, adjusting everything from lighting to room temperature, opening windows, and even sending messages. It was a truly integrated experience, a vision brought to life. The crowd erupted in applause, and Ethan felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. The world was finally starting to see the true potential of this technology. The future of accessibility was here, and it was more exciting than anyone had ever dreamed. But for Ethan, the journey was far from over. There were still more lives to change, more barriers to break down, and more dreams to realize. The ripple effect had only just begun, and as he looked out at the cheering crowd, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of a world transformed. The world had already begun to change in ways that Ethan had once only dreamed of. The neurosphere had ignited a fire of possibility, reaching not just people with physical disabilities but entire communities, workplaces, and families who now saw a future without limits. As the system became integrated into homes, schools, and even workplaces, its impact was undeniable. More people than ever before could live with autonomy, control, and dignity, things that were once thought unattainable. But while the world was reacting to the breakthrough, Ethan himself was quietly reflecting on everything that had happened. He'd come a long way since that first idea had sparked in his mind, a single vision for a wheelchair that could change the lives of people like Leo. Now, he was part of something far bigger. The world had embraced a new way of thinking about mobility and accessibility, and it was only just beginning to understand the implications of such a shift. One crisp autumn morning, as Ethan sat at his desk, reviewing some final reports before a major presentation in Tokyo, he received a message that stopped him in his tracks. It was from Maria. "Ethan, you won't believe this. It's time. Leo wants to talk to you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't heard from Leo in months, After the initial launch, Leo had moved to a new school, and Ethan had been too wrapped up in the expanding project to keep in touch. He immediately called Maria to hear the news firsthand. "Ethan, you've got to hear this. Leo's been using the neurosphere at his new school. He's even become somewhat of a local celebrity. People keep asking how he's able to do things that no one else can. He wanted to tell you about it personally." Ethan was speechless for a moment, then managed to speak, his voice filled with emotion. "What's he doing now?" Well, he's living a life most people thought he couldn't," Maria said, her voice tinged with pride. "And he wanted you to know how much it's meant to him. He wants you to come visit him. Soon." Ethan didn't hesitate. The very next day, he boarded a flight to the small town where Leo had been living since his family moved after the launch. It was a quiet, almost idyllic place, a place far removed from the bustling tech hubs of Silicon Valley, where the real-world impact of his work was now being felt in the lives of ordinary people. When he arrived, he was greeted by Leo's parents, who were full of warmth and gratitude. They led him to the backyard, where Leo was waiting. There he was, Leo, now a young teenager, but with the same bright, curious eyes that had first captured Ethan's attention. He was sitting in a large, open field with a few of his classmates, all of whom were gathered around, laughing and chatting. As Ethan approached, Leo spotted him and broke into a wide smile. "Ethan!" Leo called out, his voice full of excitement. Ethan hurried over, and before he could say anything, Leo stood up. Without help, using only his mind to control the neurosphere system integrated with his chair. It was the first time Ethan had seen it in action in a real-world setting. Leo moved effortlessly across the grass, making adjustments to his environment with just a thought. "I can do so much more now," Leo said as he approached. "I'm the fastest at school, and not just on my wheelchair. I can control everything. My chair, the lights, the TV at home, even the computer at school. I'm learning faster than ever before." Ethan's heart swelled. This was the dream, seeing it unfold in real life, in a way he had always hoped for but never fully imagined. Leo wasn't just using the technology, he was thriving because of it. It was no longer just about mobility. It was about freedom, education, and opportunity. "I want to show you something," Leo said. He led Ethan over to a small table where a group of other kids were seated, all of whom had been using the system in some form. Leo introduced them, each with their own story, each with their own challenges. Some had visual impairments, some had mobility issues, and a few were overcoming neurological conditions. But all of them had one thing in common: the neurosphere. "We've been working on something," one of Leo's friends said, a girl named Sarah who had a severe form of muscular dystrophy. She had trouble moving her hands, but now controlled her environment with her mind. "We've developed a new app that helps us learn better in class. It uses the system to adapt our lessons to how we learn best." Ethan looked around, taking it all in. These weren't just kids using a wheelchair or assistive technology. They were innovators in their own right, pushing the boundaries of what their condition had once held them back from. They were no longer just recipients of technology, they were contributors to it. And that realization filled Ethan with a profound sense of accomplishment. "This is amazing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined it would take off like this. You're all part of something so much bigger than I could ever have dreamed. You're changing the world, just by being you." Later that evening, as Ethan and Leo sat on the porch overlooking the field, they spoke about the future. Leo shared his aspirations to become an engineer, to design new technologies that would help others like him. "I want to build things that can help people who are like me, who can't do things everyone else can. But now, I know I can." Ethan looked at Leo, his eyes brimming with pride. "You already are, Leo. You've already changed the world. And the best part is, you're just getting started." The conversation shifted to more personal matters: family, dreams, the simple joys of life. And for Ethan, it felt like everything had come full circle. From a single act of kindness and a chair that had seemed like just a product, to this moment. He realized that the true impact of what they had built was not in the technology, but in the lives it had touched. As the sun set over the horizon, Ethan knew that the journey ahead was still long, but the foundation had been laid. The world was a better place because of people like Leo, and he had played a small part in making that happen. In the months that followed, Ethan and the team worked tirelessly to refine the system, bringing it to even more people in need. They expanded it globally, introduced new features, and made sure that no one was left behind. The world had finally seen what true inclusion and accessibility could look like. And for Ethan, as he looked back on everything that had happened, the technology, the breakthroughs, the lives changed, it all felt worth it. Every late night, every challenge, every failure, it had led to this moment. A world where people could live freely, with the power to shape their own destinies, no longer limited by their bodies. And that, he realized, was the greatest gift he could ever give. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the impact of the neurosphere continued to spread far beyond anything Ethan and his team could have imagined. The technology was no longer just a tool for people with disabilities. It had become a symbol of empowerment, a beacon of hope for those who had once felt left behind by society. Communities were transforming, businesses were evolving, and governments were beginning to see the potential for a future where accessibility was no longer a luxury, but a given. Ethan had returned to Silicon Valley after his visit to Leo, feeling more inspired than ever. The launch of the neurosphere had been a resounding success, but there was still so much to do. New partnerships were being formed with educational institutions, healthcare providers, and even government agencies, all eager to integrate the system into their existing frameworks. One afternoon, while walking through the Tesla campus, Ethan ran into Maria, who had been at the forefront of the project's outreach efforts. She was on the phone, her voice filled with excitement. "Ethan," she said as she hung up the phone, "you're not going to believe this. I just got off the phone with a major hospital network. They want to integrate the neurosphere into their patient care systems. They're planning to roll it out in their rehabilitation centers starting next month." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. "That's huge. Do they realize what this could mean for the patients?" Maria nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. For people in long-term rehabilitation, this technology could change everything, allow them to regain independence much faster, help them participate in therapy more effectively, and even speed up recovery." Ethan paused, thinking about the implications of this new development. This could be the catalyst for a whole new approach to healthcare. Imagine a hospital where patients can control their environment, their therapy sessions, and their recovery process, all through their thoughts. It's not just about physical healing, it's about emotional and mental empowerment too. Maria smiled. "It's the next step in making the world more inclusive, and you were the one who started it all." Later that week, Ethan was invited to speak at a global accessibility conference in New York City. The conference had become a major event, attracting leaders in healthcare, technology, education, and social policy, all eager to learn about the latest developments in making the world more accessible to those with disabilities. Ethan's keynote address would be the highlight of the event, and as he prepared his speech, he reflected on just how far the project had come. The speech was simple, but it carried a powerful message. Accessibility is not just a necessity, it is a right. Ethan spoke about how the neurosphere had not only revolutionized the lives of individuals, but had sparked a larger societal movement. A movement that demanded greater inclusion, equity, and opportunity for all. "I've learned something very important," Ethan said during his address. "The most important barrier to accessibility is not physical, it's mental. We often limit ourselves by what we believe is possible. But when we change that mindset, when we challenge what we think is possible, we open doors for people to live fuller, richer lives." That's what this technology represents, the breaking of those mental barriers. The room was silent as the weight of his words hung in the air. Then, a wave of applause erupted, not just from the audience, but from the people who had been directly impacted by the technology. Families with children, students, workers, and even senior citizens who had seen their lives transformed by the system. For Ethan, the applause was not just a recognition of his work. It was the sound of lives changing, of barriers being broken down, of a future finally becoming more inclusive. Months passed, and the ripple effect continued to grow. Schools around the world adopted the technology, allowing children with disabilities to attend class with the same level of participation as their peers. Workplaces implemented the neurosphere to enable employees to work more efficiently and comfortably. Transportation systems began incorporating the technology, allowing people to move around with ease, from the moment they left their homes to the moment they arrived at their destination. But for Ethan, the most heartwarming part of this journey was seeing how the technology had transformed the lives of individuals. Like Leo, people were no longer just surviving. They were thriving. They were discovering new passions, pursuing careers, and engaging in relationships in ways that had once been unimaginable. One evening, Ethan received an unexpected message from an old friend. It was from his former mentor, Dr. Catherine Hayes, a renowned neurologist who had once guided him through the early stages of the project. "Ethan, I just wanted to say how proud I am of everything you've accomplished. I'm seeing firsthand how this technology is changing the lives of my patients. They're regaining not just mobility, but a sense of dignity. Thank you for making all of this possible." Ethan smiled as he read the message. It was a reminder of how far they had come, but also a reminder of the many people who had helped make this dream a reality. It wasn't just about his vision. It was about the collective effort of everyone involved. As the years passed, the neurosphere became a part of everyday life. It was no longer seen as a groundbreaking technology. It had become a fundamental part of how the world worked. Ethan's work had created a new normal, a world where accessibility was not just an afterthought, but a foundational element of society. One day, as Ethan stood on the balcony of his office, overlooking the bustling city below, he thought back to that moment when the idea for the wheelchair first came to him. It had been a simple thought, driven by a desire to help a single child. But that thought had snowballed, becoming something much larger than he could ever have imagined. It had started with one person, but now it had impacted millions. It had sparked a revolution. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything they had accomplished. He had played a part in changing the world, but he also knew that the journey was far from over. There were still millions of people out there who needed help, and he wasn't going to stop until every single one of them had the chance to live the life they deserved. The neurosphere was not just a product. It was a movement, and Ethan was determined to keep pushing forward, one step at a time, to ensure that no one, no matter their circumstances, was ever left behind. The ripple effect had only just begun, and as the sun set over the horizon, Ethan knew that the best was yet to come. Months after the conference in New York, Ethan found himself standing at the edge of yet another monumental crossroads. The impact of the neurosphere had grown exponentially, not just in terms of accessibility, but also in how it had shaped the future of education, employment, and healthcare for people with disabilities. Yet, despite all the recognition and success, Ethan felt a sense of restlessness. His initial vision had been realized. Leo, along with countless others, had experienced firsthand the transformational power of the neurosphere. But now, as the world seemed to be catching up, Ethan began to wonder, what was next? How could he keep pushing the boundaries of possibility? The world was changing, yes, but it was also evolving in ways that presented new challenges, ones he hadn't anticipated. One evening, Ethan sat down with Maria at their favorite cafe. The familiar buzz of conversation and the soft clinking of coffee cups was the perfect backdrop for their conversation. Maria had been the perfect partner in the journey, helping to drive the outreach, keep the momentum going, and maintain a clear vision as the company expanded. Together, they had built something extraordinary. But tonight, their conversation was different. Maria could sense the unease in Ethan, the way his mind seemed to be working 1,000 miles ahead of everything that was happening. "So, what's on your mind, Ethan?" she asked, leaning in slightly. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Maria. We've done so much, and it feels like we've only scratched the surface. I keep thinking about how the world is changing in ways I never thought it would. There are new challenges every day. The technology is great, but what about the people we haven't reached yet? What happens when it's not just about the technology anymore?" Maria considered this for a moment before responding. "You've always been someone who looks to the future, who sees what others can't. You've done more than most people could dream of. But I think what you're asking isn't about what's next for the neurosphere itself. It's about what's next for the world." Ethan nodded, finally voicing the question that had been echoing in his mind for months. "Exactly. I'm wondering if we're ready for the next leap. What if we could do more than just improve mobility? What if we could change the way people think about human potential altogether? What if the next step isn't just about accessibility? What if it's about a new way of being? Maria leaned back, intrigued by Ethan's thoughts. You're talking about something bigger than the neurosphere. You're talking about a paradigm shift in how we perceive people with disabilities, and maybe even the way we think about human capabilities in general. Ethan's eyes lit up. Yes, think about it. What if we could create systems that not only allow people with disabilities to live more independently, but could also enhance human capabilities beyond what's typical? What if the same principles we've applied to helping people live more autonomously could be used to amplify abilities, to make people more connected with their environment and their communities? The next few months were a whirlwind. Ethan, Maria, and the team began brainstorming what they were now calling the Humanity Project. It was a vision that stretched beyond technology and innovation. It was about creating a new framework for society, one where human potential was not constrained by physical or cognitive limitations. They envisioned a world where people could not only overcome challenges but could enhance their natural abilities, whether it be cognitive, physical, or emotional. The neurosphere was just the first step in this grand vision. With advancements in AI, neurotechnology, and human-computer interfaces, the team started working on ways to integrate the neurosphere's core technology with cutting-edge enhancements that could help individuals surpass their current limitations. This new direction would push beyond accessibility. It would be about augmentation. They began exploring how neurofeedback systems could help users improve cognitive functions like focus and memory, how neural interfaces could assist in communication for people with speech or hearing impairments, and even how biofeedback could help individuals regulate their emotions and stress. But this new direction also brought with it new ethical questions, ones they hadn't fully grappled with before. What did it mean to enhance human ability? Where was the line between helping someone overcome a challenge and altering what it meant to be human? Ethan found himself wrestling with these questions, but one thing was clear. The future was limitless, and they couldn't stop now. As the Humanity Project began to take shape, they started working with global partners, scientists, ethicists, medical professionals, and educators, to ensure that the technology was not only effective but also aligned with a set of ethical standards that would protect the dignity and autonomy of the people it aimed to help. But there was still much to be done. Ethan knew that they were standing at the edge of something that could be as transformative as it was controversial. He was no longer just building a product. He was helping to shape the very future of humanity. One day, as Ethan sat in a conference room with a group of experts discussing the integration of AI into the Humanity Project, he received a call from Leo. "Ethan, you've got to see this," Leo said, his voice bubbling with excitement. "What's going on, Leo?" Ethan asked, surprised. "I've been working with the new app you sent over. It's like my brain is working on a whole new level. I can solve problems faster, think clearer, and my reaction times have improved. It's not just about my chair anymore. This is like a whole new me. And it's not just me. There are others, too. I think we're ready." Ethan's heart raced. Ready for what? "For the next big step," Leo said confidently. "I think we can do more than just help people move and communicate. I think we can change how we think, how we experience the world around us." Ethan stood up, his mind whirring with possibilities. Leo was right. This wasn't just about improving lives anymore. It was about unlocking something deeper within people. This was the Humanity Project in its purest form. The next day, Ethan gathered the team together. They were ready to take the next step. With the foundation of the neurosphere as their base, they were about to embark on the next great leap in human potential. But even as they prepared to launch the new initiative, Ethan knew that the journey would never truly be over. There would always be more questions to answer, more challenges to face. The future was unpredictable, but one thing was certain. They were creating a world where nothing was impossible. And as the team began to work on the next phase of the project, Ethan could feel the weight of history on his shoulders. This was bigger than he could have ever dreamed. And the real work, the most transformative work, was only just beginning. The launch of the Humanity Project wasn't just another milestone for the team. It was a monumental moment that would forever change the course of human history. For months, Ethan, Maria, and the rest of the team had been working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that the next phase of their vision would be both groundbreaking and responsible. They had integrated advanced neurofeedback systems, AI-assisted cognition tools, and bioenhancement features, creating a holistic platform that wasn't just about accessibility anymore. It was about unlocking human potential in ways never before imagined. The world was watching, waiting to see what would happen when the project was unveiled. It wasn't just tech enthusiasts or scientists who were interested. It was governments, educators, healthcare providers, and even entire communities who were eager to see how this new paradigm could change the lives of billions. It was a bright morning when Ethan stood on stage at the Global Tech Summit in Berlin, ready to present the culmination of years of work. The audience was packed with some of the most influential people in the world: tech moguls, policymakers, academics, and social innovators, all waiting to hear about the next chapter in human evolution. The spotlight was on Ethan as he stepped up to the podium. For a moment, he was struck by the magnitude of what they were about to do. This wasn't just a product launch. It was a defining moment in history. "Good morning, everyone," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I'm here to talk to you about the future of human potential. Not in the abstract, not in the distant future, but in the here and now. Today, we're going to change the way we think about disability, ability, and what it means to be human." The room fell silent as Ethan continued, outlining the vision behind the Humanity Project. He spoke about how, for years, they had been focused on helping people overcome barriers. But now, the focus had shifted. "It's no longer just about overcoming obstacles," he said. "It's about amplifying the strengths we all possess. It's about unlocking the hidden potential within every individual, regardless of their circumstances." The presentation was filled with live demonstrations, real people, many of whom had been part of the early development phase of the neurosphere, showing how the new technologies were able to help them not just regain lost capabilities, but enhance them. One participant, Maria, a young woman who had once been wheelchair-bound, demonstrated the new cognitive interface, showing how she could think more clearly, recall information more quickly, and even process emotions with greater control. Another demonstration featured Leo, who was now using an upgraded version of the neurosphere to control a robotic arm with his thoughts. The arm was able to perform complex tasks, writing, picking up delicate objects, even painting, showing how the system could help individuals gain not just mobility but dexterity and control over their environment. The room erupted into applause. It wasn't just the technology that captivated the audience. It was the transformative potential of what was being presented. The boundaries of what people with disabilities could achieve were now limitless. The ability to not just survive, but to thrive in a world that was once stacked against them was no longer a dream. It was a reality. As the summit continued, news outlets from around the world began reporting on the event. Headlines read, "The Neurosphere revolutionizes human potential and from disability to limitless ability. The Humanity Project's game-changing breakthrough." Social media was flooded with hashtags like #FutureOfHumanPotential and #LimitlessAbility. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly with messages of congratulations and excitement from every corner of the globe. But even as the world celebrated, Ethan remained focused. This was only the beginning. The real work was just beginning to unfold. The success of the Humanity Project had opened doors to partnerships with organizations around the world that were eager to use the technology in new and innovative ways. In the days following the summit, the team began receiving an outpouring of requests from institutions wanting to integrate the technology into their systems. Universities wanted to explore how the system could enhance learning capabilities for students with cognitive challenges. Hospitals wanted to use it for physical rehabilitation, not just for recovery, but for enhancing motor function in patients with neurological conditions. And businesses saw the potential for augmenting their workforce, helping employees perform at their highest capacity, no matter their physical or cognitive limitations. But with all this success came a series of difficult questions that Ethan and his team had to confront. The technology had the potential to revolutionize the world, but it also posed ethical challenges. How far could they push the limits of human augmentation? Was there a line between empowering people and creating a world where inequality could be amplified by those who could afford these enhancements? Ethan sat down with Maria and the team to discuss the ethical implications of their work. "We have to be careful," Ethan said, rubbing his eyes. This is bigger than we ever imagined. We're not just creating a product anymore. We're shaping society. We need to make sure that these technologies don't just benefit the wealthy, but everyone, especially those who need it the most. Maria nodded. We need to ensure that we're not just offering a privilege. The Humanity Project was always about equality. If we're not careful, we could create a divide. Those who have access to this technology and those who don't. The team agreed, and over the next few months, they worked tirelessly to develop a model for widespread access. They partnered with nonprofit organizations, healthcare providers, and governments to create programs that would ensure that the technology could reach those in need, regardless of their socioeconomic status. They launched subsidized programs, expanded access through education, and worked with policymakers to build regulations that ensured the technology would be used ethically and responsibly. As the year came to a close, Ethan looked back at the progress they had made and the challenges that lay ahead. The Humanity Project had already begun to reshape the world in profound ways, but there was still so much work to be done. New technologies were emerging, new questions were being asked, and the road ahead was uncertain. But Ethan wasn't worried. He had always believed that the greatest achievements came from the greatest challenges. And now, with the support of his team and the world behind him, he was ready to face whatever came next. The future of human potential was limitless, and Ethan was just getting started. The journey had begun, and as Ethan gazed out over the city skyline, he knew that the work of his lifetime was far from over. But one thing was certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, humanity was poised for a future where no one was left behind. The Humanity Project was just the beginning, and the possibilities were endless. As the dust settled from the groundbreaking success of the Humanity Project, Ethan found himself in a world that was rapidly transforming. The technology was no longer just a revolutionary product. It had become a fundamental shift in how society viewed ability and potential. Across the globe, people were using the neurosphere and its augmentative technologies to achieve what was once thought impossible. It wasn't just about accessibility anymore. It was about empowerment, growth, and redefining the human experience. But with the excitement came the reality of managing such a profound change. Ethan knew that the challenges were far from over. The Humanity Project had catalyzed a new way of thinking, but there was a long road ahead to ensure its responsible integration into every corner of society. In the weeks following the launch, Ethan and Maria became increasingly immersed in their mission to build bridges between technological innovation and the everyday lives of people. Their partnership with healthcare providers, universities, and governments was starting to bear fruit. They were seeing firsthand how the neurosphere could transform healthcare systems, assist in rehabilitation, and help people with cognitive disabilities excel in education. One of the most moving moments came when they received a call from a hospital in a rural area that had integrated the neurosphere into its physical therapy program. A young woman, Zoe, had suffered a traumatic accident that left her unable to walk or use her hands. She had spent months in rehabilitation, struggling with physical therapy but making minimal progress. After using the neurosphere's biofeedback and cognitive enhancement modules, Zoe experienced remarkable improvement in both mobility and motor function. Her doctors were astonished at the speed of her recovery, and her emotional state improved as well, something that had previously been difficult to address. Zoe's story was one of countless others. Ethan couldn't help but feel both proud and humbled by the impact the technology was having. But the realization was clear. It wasn't just about the technology. It was about people, their hopes, their fears, their dreams. The real magic was in how the technology empowered individuals to rediscover their own potential. However, with every success, there were new hurdles to overcome. Ethan and Maria had been careful to create an ethical framework for the project, but as the technology began to expand globally, new questions and controversies emerged. One of the most pressing concerns was the potential for abuse. How would they ensure that only those who truly needed the technology had access to it? What about the wealthy elite who could afford enhancements that others could not? Ethan spent countless hours meeting with leaders in policy, ethics, and technology to create frameworks that could address these concerns. He wanted the Humanity Project to remain true to its core mission, creating equality, not deepening divides. Then came the invitation. A global summit on human rights and technology, where world leaders, innovators, and thought leaders would gather to discuss the ethics of human enhancement. The summit promised to be a defining moment, a chance to make a lasting statement about the future of human capabilities and the responsibility that came with it. Maria could sense Ethan's nerves as they prepared for the summit. This wasn't just a chance to showcase the technology. It was a chance to set the global agenda on how society would handle the integration of human enhancement into everyday life. As they stood in the grand auditorium, Ethan couldn't help but feel a rush of anticipation. This was the next phase of their mission. The world was ready for change, but would they embrace it, or would fear and uncertainty hold them back? The summit began with impassioned speeches about the role of technology in shaping society. Speakers from all corners of the globe discussed the impact of AI, biotechnology, and neurotechnology on human rights, autonomy, and equality. Ethan listened carefully, knowing that this was an opportunity to address the most pressing question of all. How could they ensure that these transformative technologies didn't just benefit a few, but served everyone? When it was his turn to speak, Ethan stood up, his voice steady but filled with conviction. The technology we've developed, he began, is not a tool to create inequality. It's a tool to unlock the potential within every human being. Whether you're a child with autism or an adult who's lost mobility, these advancements should empower you to live your fullest life. But we must also be vigilant. We must ensure that we are not creating new divisions, new barriers that only the rich can overcome, while others are left behind. He paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. The room was quiet, the weight of his words settling over everyone. We have a responsibility, as innovators, to ensure that these technologies are distributed in a way that promotes equity. We must build systems that ensure access for those who need it most, not just those who can afford it. That is the future I believe in, a future where we create a world where everyone has the ability to thrive. The summit was a turning point. Ethan's speech was met with applause and support, but it also sparked fierce debate. It wasn't just about what the technology could do. It was about how it could be used and how it could be regulated. Over the next few months, Ethan and Maria worked with governments and international organizations to create policies that would ensure the responsible use of neuroenhancement technologies. They collaborated with experts in bioethics, human rights, and technology to draft guidelines for the safe and equitable implementation of human enhancement systems. But despite the progress, there was a lingering question that Ethan couldn't shake. How would society handle this profound shift? Would people accept these enhancements as part of their lives? Or would there be resistance from those who feared that the world was moving too fast, too soon? The answers wouldn't come easily. Back at the company's headquarters, the team worked around the clock to refine the technology, addressing any remaining challenges and ensuring the system's stability. As they fine-tuned the latest version of the neurosphere, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The world was changing, and they were leading that change. The vision that had started with a single spark of hope for Leo had grown into something much larger, something that had the potential to reshape humanity itself. As the year came to a close, Ethan sat down with Maria in their office, reflecting on how far they had come. "We've built something incredible," Maria said quietly, looking out the window at the city skyline. Ethan nodded, but his mind was already turning toward the future. "Yes, but it's only just begun. The real work is making sure this technology benefits everyone. We have to ensure that we're always pushing forward, never resting on our laurels." Maria smiled. "And I have no doubt that you'll lead us there, Ethan. You always have." With a sense of quiet determination, Ethan turned back to his desk, ready to continue the journey. The world was changing, and it was up to them to guide it toward a future where every person had the ability to reach their fullest potential. And with that, the next chapter of the Humanity Project began. The Humanity Project was rapidly gaining momentum, but with its success came a host of complex challenges. Ethan and his team had worked hard to make the technology available to everyone, but access remained a fundamental issue. As the demand for the neurosphere and related technologies grew, so did the concerns over how to ensure equitable distribution. Some regions, particularly in underdeveloped areas, were still struggling to get the basic necessities of life, let alone advanced biotechnological tools. The team knew that solving this problem wasn't just a matter of technology, it was a matter of logistics, politics, and culture. A pivotal moment arrived when Ethan received an invitation to speak at a special United Nations conference on global technological equality. The conference was to bring together leaders from around the world, governments, businesses, philanthropists, and NGOs, each focused on finding ways to ensure that new technologies, particularly in the field of human enhancement, didn't widen the gap between the rich and the poor. For Ethan, it was an opportunity to address the issue head-on. It was time to talk about bridging the divide, not just in terms of technology, but also in terms of opportunities, access, and education. He and Maria spent weeks preparing, refining their message, and determining the most impactful way to present their vision. When the day of the conference arrived, Ethan was ready. The venue was packed, an enormous hall in Geneva, filled with diplomats, business moguls, scientists, and advocates. As he walked to the stage, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about showcasing the technology anymore. It was about shaping the future. He cleared his throat and stepped up to the podium, scanning the room. His eyes landed on the faces of those in the audience, some hopeful, some skeptical, but all deeply invested in the future of human enhancement. "Thank you for having me here today," Ethan began. "The Humanity Project is not just a technological breakthrough. It's a call to action, a call to address inequality, not just in wealth, but in the most fundamental aspect of our existence, our potential." He paused, letting the words sink in. For too long, we've lived in a world where opportunity has been reserved for a select few. But what if that could change? What if, instead of focusing solely on wealth as the measure of success, we focused on what truly matters, our ability to grow, to learn, to thrive, regardless of where we start in life? Ethan's voice grew stronger, fueled by the passion he felt. The neurosphere and the technologies we're developing are designed to unlock human potential, but they must be made available to everyone. We cannot afford to let this new era of human enhancement be a privilege for the wealthy few. We must make it accessible to everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, geography, or background. As Ethan spoke, he looked around the room, seeing nods of agreement from some and skeptical frowns from others. The conversation around technology and inequality was still new for many, and the challenges ahead were daunting. But Ethan knew that the road to equality and human enhancement wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. He continued, "We are already seeing how these technologies can change lives. We've witnessed it firsthand, with children learning faster, adults regaining mobility and cognitive abilities they never thought possible, and people rediscovering a sense of purpose and hope. But to make this a reality for everyone, we must create a global infrastructure that supports this transition." Ethan shared details about the Humanity Project's efforts to establish partnerships with governments, nonprofits, and educational institutions around the world. He explained their work to subsidize costs in impoverished regions, provide free training to healthcare providers, and create global scholarships for individuals to gain access to the technology. "We need to see beyond borders," he urged. "The divide we are talking about is not just one of wealth, it's one of access. It's one of opportunity. And the only way to solve it is by coming together as a global community to make sure that these life-changing technologies are available to everyone." The speech was met with applause, but the questions that followed showed just how much work was left to be done. Some questioned the long-term sustainability of making the technology affordable worldwide. Others raised concerns about the ethical implications of human enhancement. Could the technology be used for malicious purposes? Could it lead to a society where only the enhanced were considered worthy or capable? Ethan took a deep breath before addressing the panel. "These are valid concerns," he said, "and we are taking every step to address them. But we must remember, technology is only a tool. It is how we choose to use it that determines its value. If we work together, we can ensure that the Humanity Project remains a force for good, a force that brings people together, that helps create a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed." The conference concluded with a promise. An international coalition would be formed, made up of stakeholders from governments, businesses, and civil society, to tackle the issue of global access to human enhancement technologies. Ethan left the summit with a renewed sense of purpose. He had spoken his truth, but now the real work was just beginning. As he boarded the flight back to the States, Maria joined him in the cabin. The two of them exchanged quiet glances, knowing that their efforts were far from over. "The world is finally starting to understand," Maria said softly, "but we still have to show them. We have to make it real for everyone, not just the privileged." Ethan nodded. "We'll make it happen. This is just the first step. Now, it's time to get to work." Back at the company, the team began developing new models for global distribution. They partnered with international organizations, collaborated with local governments, and worked with educational institutions to ensure that the neurosphere's life-changing capabilities were integrated into every part of society. But not everyone was on board with the changes. As the technology grew, so did the voices of opposition. Critics from various sectors began to question whether the world was ready for such profound changes. There were concerns over privacy, security, and the consequences of human enhancement on identity and culture. Some even feared that the Humanity Project was ushering in an era of societal division, where only the augmented would succeed. Despite these voices of opposition, Ethan and Maria were undeterred. They knew that the Humanity Project wasn't just about technology, it was about creating a world where no one was left behind. They continued to push forward, working tirelessly to refine the systems, ensure global access, and meet the ethical challenges head-on. As the months passed, more and more people around the world began to benefit from the technology. New educational programs emerged, where children were able to enhance their learning capabilities through cognitive upgrades. Hospitals in developing nations received the neurosphere at reduced prices, enabling doctors and therapists to help people recover from injuries that had once been deemed permanent. Ethan stood before his team, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "We're changing the world," he said, "one person at a time. And no matter how hard the road gets, we will always be there to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to live their fullest life." And with that, the journey continued. The world was changing, and the Humanity Project was leading the way, showing that, together, humanity's greatest strength wasn't in technology alone, but in the unity that could be created when everyone had the opportunity to reach their full potential. Months passed, and the Humanity Project continued to evolve. As Ethan and Maria worked tirelessly to ensure the integration of the neurosphere on a global scale, the world was beginning to change in ways they hadn't expected. The initial skepticism surrounding the technology had given way to widespread acceptance in many places, but the challenge of maintaining ethical integrity and ensuring equal access was far from over. One of the most pressing issues now was scaling the infrastructure. While the technology itself was revolutionary, there were still hurdles in ensuring that people everywhere, particularly in remote and underprivileged areas, could access the necessary equipment and training. Partnerships were essential, but it wasn't always easy to convince governments and private sector players to put aside their self-interest for the common good. Ethan stood at the window of his office one evening, watching the sunset over the skyline of New York City. Maria walked in quietly, a stack of reports in her hands. The tension in the air was palpable. Despite the progress, the weight of the challenge ahead was ever present. "Any breakthroughs?" Ethan asked, his voice soft but full of determination. Maria nodded as she placed the papers on his desk. "We're making progress with local partnerships in Africa and Southeast Asia. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, but the logistics, it's not easy. The supply chain for these advanced technologies needs constant attention, and we're still working on negotiating subsidies for the most remote regions." Ethan let out a long breath. "We need a plan that goes beyond just the hardware. It's the education, the training, the support that makes the technology sustainable." Maria smiled. "I know. That's why we're focusing on building local teams in each region. People who understand their communities and can help them navigate the technology." Ethan turned back to the view. His mind was still racing. The Humanity Project had become more than just a business venture. It was a global movement. But with that came responsibility. Responsibility to ensure that the world didn't just change for the better, but that it changed in a way that benefited everyone, not just the few. Meanwhile, in the heart of Africa, a story was unfolding that would soon capture the world's attention. In a small village in Kenya, a young boy named Jamal had been living with a severe physical disability that had left him unable to walk. His condition had kept him isolated from many of the opportunities other children had. and he often sat on the sidelines, watching his peers play and learn with a sense of longing. When the Neurosphere program was introduced to the area, it was seen as a long shot. The local healthcare facility had been equipped with the necessary tools, but would they be able to reach Jamal and others like him? Could the technology work for people in remote villages, far from the technological hubs of the world? Ethan and Maria had made it a point to ensure that no matter how far removed a community was from the technological centers, they would still have access to the life-changing potential of the Neurosphere. With the help of local doctors and technicians, Jamal was given access to the system. At first, it seemed like just another intervention, another therapy that might not work. But something extraordinary happened. The Neurosphere helped Jamal's brain form new neural connections, bypassing the damaged areas of his spinal cord. Within weeks, Jamal began to show signs of improvement. He moved his legs for the first time in years, and his smile was brighter than ever. Jamal's case soon became an international story. Media outlets from all over the world picked up the story, praising the technology and the impact it had on his life. But for Ethan and Maria, Jamal's story was not about the technology itself, it was about the people. It was a reminder that this wasn't just a project or a business venture. It was about giving people a chance to rewrite their lives, no matter where they came from. Back in the United States, the media frenzy around Jamal's story began to take off. Ethan's phone was ringing off the hook. Journalists, influencers, and even world leaders were reaching out, wanting to know how the Humanity Project had made such a remarkable difference. Ethan had learned quickly that with great visibility came great pressure. It was no longer just about innovation. It was about managing expectations. How could they ensure that Jamal's success wasn't an isolated incident? How could they make sure that every person, from the bustling cities to the rural villages, could have the same opportunity? Maria sat across from him in the conference room, studying the news coverage of Jamal's progress. This is big, Ethan. The world is watching now. It's more than just about the technology. It's about the movement you started. Ethan rubbed his temples. I didn't expect this kind of attention. It's overwhelming, Maria. And the pressure. It's only going to get more intense. Maria nodded. But it's a good thing, right? This is the moment to really push forward. If the world sees the difference we're making, they'll rally behind us. They'll want to be part of this. Ethan wasn't so sure. He had always been focused on the mission, on the long-term goals. But the sudden rush of fame, the constant questions about scalability and ethical concerns, it was a lot to handle. And it wasn't just the pressure that weighed on him. It was the fear of failure. If they couldn't sustain this progress, if they couldn't meet the demands of a world that was suddenly so invested in the future of human enhancement, what would that mean? The challenges didn't end there. Political factions began to argue over who should control access to the Neurosphere. Some governments wanted to nationalize the technology, while others pushed for privatization. Ethics boards and regulators started to debate the potential dangers of enhanced intelligence and human augmentation. Ethan found himself in constant meetings with lawmakers, industry leaders, and activists. Everyone had an opinion, but no one seemed to agree on a universal approach. It became clear that while the technology had the potential to change the world, there was a long road ahead in making sure it didn't become a source of division. Through all the chaos, Maria was there, as steady as ever. She kept reminding Ethan of their core purpose, pushing him to see beyond the immediate hurdles and focus on the broader picture. "You've always known it would be a fight," she said one night, after another intense meeting with regulators. "But you're not doing this for the applause. You're doing this because you believe in a world where everyone has a shot. Don't let the noise drown that out." The days turned into weeks, and despite the pressures, Ethan found renewed strength in the stories pouring in from around the world. People were using the Neurosphere to achieve things they'd never dreamed possible. The children in Kenya were walking, the elderly in Japan were regaining their mobility, and adults with cognitive disabilities were learning at rates previously unheard of. Ethan and Maria knew they couldn't stop now. There were still many obstacles ahead, but with each success, they were closer to realizing their vision of a world where everyone, regardless of circumstance, had access to the tools that would help them flourish. As Ethan looked out across the landscape of possibilities, he realized one thing. The world was on the brink of a new horizon. It was a horizon that was full of potential, and it was just beginning to unfold. The journey was far from over. But for the first time, Ethan felt hopeful about the future. And with that hope, he knew that nothing could stop the revolution they had started, no matter how difficult the road ahead. As the Humanity Project expanded, the global conversation about human enhancement began to shift. What started as a hopeful movement aimed at leveling the playing field and unlocking human potential was now a lightning rod for controversy. With each success story, such as Jamal's remarkable recovery, more questions were raised about the long-term consequences of bioenhancements. Ethicists, lawmakers, and cultural leaders worldwide began to grapple with a central issue. What does it mean to be human in an age where technology can fundamentally alter our biology, intelligence, and capabilities? It was a crisp fall day when Ethan found himself in yet another heated debate, this time in a closed-door meeting with a group of influential bioethicists in Washington, D.C. He was seated at a long, polished table, surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the field. The room was filled with tension, the air thick with skepticism. Mr. Ward, Dr. Helen Travers, a well-respected bioethicist, began, her voice cutting through the silence. You and your team are playing with fire. You talk about equality and opportunity, but where is the line between enhancement and coercion? Will those who choose not to enhance be left behind, unable to compete in a world where everyone else is augmented? Ethan sat up straighter, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. That's exactly why the Humanity Project was designed with ethical safeguards in place, he replied, his voice steady but firm. Our goal is not to create a divided society where only the enhanced succeed. It's about providing access, not coercion. Everyone should have the choice to enhance themselves. No one is forced into it. And we're working to ensure that those who choose not to enhance still have every opportunity to thrive. Dr. Travers leaned forward, her gaze intense. But don't you see? You can't separate technology from its societal context. We're entering a dangerous territory. Soon, if people don't augment themselves, they will be seen as less capable. Employers will hire the enhanced, governments will favor them, and children who don't have access to these tools will fall behind in school. What you're doing will create a two-tiered society. One group will have access to unimaginable abilities, and the other will be left in the dust. Ethan took a deep breath, aware of the moral complexities at play. I understand the concern, but that's why we're not just focusing on the technology itself. We're focusing on access, education, and inclusion. The Humanity Project isn't about creating a class of superhumans. It's about giving people the tools to reach their potential, whether they choose to enhance or not. And in every region we enter, we make sure that the infrastructure exists to support those who are unwilling or unable to enhance. Helen shook her head, unconvinced. That's a noble goal, Mr. Ward, but the truth is that access will never be equal. Technology like this will always be expensive to develop and maintain. The rich will get richer, and the poor will be left behind, struggling to survive in a world that no longer sees them as competitive. Ethan felt the sting of her words. The road to true equality was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. He had always believed that technology could level the playing field, but Dr. Travers' warnings were a harsh reminder that any system, no matter how noble its intentions, could be easily distorted. Maria, who had been silently observing the discussion, finally spoke up. Helen, I think the point here is that we want to create a world where people have the option. Whether they choose to enhance or not should be a personal decision. The technology, as we see it, is not about creating a new elite. It's about giving individuals the autonomy to choose their path. Helen raised an eyebrow. And what about those who can't afford it? The millions of people around the world who live in poverty, who don't have access to the resources that would allow them to even consider these options. Maria met her gaze. That's exactly why we're working with governments, nonprofits, and educational systems to make the technology as accessible as possible. We are not trying to create a new elite. We're trying to create a society where anyone, regardless of their economic situation, has the chance to enhance their life. Despite their impassioned defense, the meeting ended on a note of uncertainty. The ethical debate around human enhancement was complex, and no solution seemed to satisfy everyone. But as Ethan and Maria left the meeting, they knew they had to continue pushing forward. The road to universal access was still littered with obstacles, but they could not afford to stop now. Back at the Humanity Project headquarters, the team spent long nights strategizing how they could improve access without compromising the integrity of their mission. They knew that while the technology itself was revolutionary, its social impact was just as important. One of the key initiatives they focused on was expanding their partnerships with educational institutions. They began launching pilot programs in underserved communities, offering free neurosphere upgrades to students who showed promise in areas such as science, technology, and the arts. These programs were designed not to create a new class of elite students, but to ensure that every child, regardless of their background, had the same chance to succeed. At the same time, they worked closely with governments to create subsidies for low-income families who wanted to access the technology. They also invested heavily in training local healthcare providers and educators to ensure that people in remote areas could benefit from the neurosphere's cognitive and physical enhancements. Despite these efforts, the pushback from critics continued. There were protests in several major cities, with people voicing concerns that the technology would further divide society. Some religious groups argued that enhancing the human body was unnatural, while others feared that the technology could be used for malicious purposes, such as government surveillance or military applications. Ethan's inbox was flooded daily with emails from journalists, activists, and even concerned citizens, asking tough questions about the future of human enhancement. One email, in particular, caught his attention. A letter from an anonymous source warning him about the dangers of unchecked technological growth and the possibility of a future where only the enhanced could thrive. The anonymous letter was just one of many signs that the public's perception of the Humanity Project was becoming increasingly polarized. Ethan realized that the only way to address these concerns was to be more transparent, more open with the public. He needed to show the world that the Humanity Project wasn't just about technology, it was about human dignity and opportunity. He called an emergency meeting with the leadership team. We need to take a step back and reassess our approach. People are scared, and they have every right to be. We've been so focused on the tech that we haven't done enough to show people why this matters on a human level. Maria nodded in agreement. We've made a lot of progress, but we need to bring people along with us. We need to make sure the technology doesn't just improve lives, it has to empower lives. Ethan felt the weight of the responsibility settle in again. The world was watching, and the choices they made now would shape the future of human enhancement. It wasn't just about innovation. It was about ensuring that the future they were building was one that included everyone, not just the privileged few. We need a new campaign, Ethan said finally, determination in his voice. We need to show the world that this is not about making some people better than others. It's about lifting everyone up. As the team set to work on their new strategy, they realized that the next chapter of the Humanity Project was not just about expanding technology. It was about engaging with the public, addressing their fears, and forging a new path forward where enhancement was not a divisive force, but a unifying one. In the end, it wasn't the technology that would define their success. It was the humanity behind it. The new global campaign that Ethan and Maria launched was their most ambitious project yet. The mission wasn't just to expand the reach of the Humanity Project, but to build a bridge of trust between their revolutionary technology and the people who had, until now, been wary of it. It was clear that they needed to do more than provide a product. They needed to show the world that the Humanity Project was more than just a technological advancement. It was a movement grounded in the values of equality, empowerment, and human dignity. The first step was to shift the narrative. They hired communications experts and social media influencers to tell the stories of everyday people whose lives had been changed by the neurosphere. Ethan and Maria knew that while the technology itself could be impressive, it was the real-world impact that would resonate with the public. The focus needed to be on people like Jamal, who had regained mobility, and others who had overcome physical and cognitive challenges thanks to the neurosphere. But not everyone was convinced. As the campaign launched, Ethan and Maria faced intense scrutiny from all sides. A major news network aired a special segment questioning the risks of human enhancement, and the ethical concerns raised by bioethicists like Dr. Helen Travers continued to make headlines. Activists were still protesting, and the divide between supporters and critics deepened. Despite the pushback, Ethan felt a sense of determination growing within him. He knew they couldn't afford to lose sight of their mission now, especially when the stakes were so high. People like Jamal deserved a world where their potential wasn't limited by their circumstances. And if they didn't continue to push forward, those people would be left behind. In a high-profile move to ease public concerns, Ethan and Maria agreed to a live, televised interview with a panel of critics, including Dr. Travers, a well-known futurist, and a representative from one of the largest anti-technology advocacy groups. The stakes were high, and the world would be watching. The interview would be a defining moment for the future of the Humanity Project. The night before the interview, Ethan and Maria sat in a small conference room, going over their talking points. Maria looked at Ethan, her eyes steady with resolve. "You ready for this?" she asked, her voice calm but full of intensity. Ethan smiled, but it was tight. "I don't know if I'll ever feel ready, but we don't have a choice. This is what we've been working toward. We need to show them what this is all about." "I believe in you," Maria said, "and I believe in the project. Just remember, it's not about winning over everyone. It's about showing the truth. People deserve to hear that." Ethan nodded. "Right. We've done good work, Maria. Now we just need to make sure people see it." The next day, the studio was buzzing with energy. Cameras were rolling, and the bright lights overhead felt almost suffocating. Ethan, Maria, and their team were seated across from the panel of critics. The host, a well-known TV personality, introduced the segment with a wide smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have a special discussion that's sure to spark controversy and conversation. We're joined by Ethan Ward, founder of the Humanity Project, and Dr. Helen Travers, an ethicist who has voiced serious concerns about the future of human enhancement. We also have futurist Dr. Robert Langdon and a representative from the Global Anti-Tech Coalition, Sarah Duncan. Together, they'll explore the future of human enhancement and the Humanity Project's potential impact on society." The host turned to Ethan, his expression neutral but probing. "Ethan, thank you for joining us. Your project has garnered both praise and criticism. The question on everyone's mind is this technology going to create a divide between the enhanced and those who remain untouched?" Ethan took a deep breath. He had prepared for this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, it felt different. His heart raced in his chest. "I think the real question we need to ask is not about creating a divide, but about closing the gaps that already exist," Ethan began, his voice steady but impassioned. "The neurosphere has the potential to level the playing field for people who have been disadvantaged by circumstance, whether that's physical disability, cognitive impairment, or simply a lack of opportunity. We're not asking anyone to enhance themselves. What we're offering is a chance for anyone, regardless of where they come from, to access tools that can help them reach their full potential. No one will be forced into anything. It's a choice." Dr. Travers interjected almost immediately, her tone sharp. "But that's the problem, Ethan. You're assuming that everyone will have the same choice. The reality is that only a select few will have the financial means to access this technology. It will be those in power who control the future, and the rest will be left behind. That's not equality. That's a new form of elitism." Ethan met her gaze, unflinching. "I disagree. We've worked hard to ensure that the neurosphere isn't an elite privilege. We've already partnered with governments to provide subsidies to those in need. And our education programs ensure that anyone, regardless of economic background, has access to the training necessary to use this technology. The future should not belong to the wealthy alone, and we're committed to making sure that doesn't happen." Sarah Duncan, the anti-tech representative, spoke up. "I understand that your intentions may be noble, but the potential for misuse is enormous. How do you ensure that this technology won't be used for surveillance, manipulation, or worse? How do you guarantee that governments won't use it to control the population?" Maria, who had been quietly observing, leaned forward. "That's a very important concern, and I'll be the first to admit that no technology is without risk, but we've implemented safeguards to prevent misuse. Every person who accesses the neurosphere has full autonomy over their data. We've built privacy protections into the system that ensure that no one can track or manipulate anyone else's thoughts or actions. We want people to have control over their own minds, not the other way around." The conversation continued for almost an hour, with more questions from the panel, some more hostile than others. But as the discussion unfolded, something began to shift. The viewers at home, who had been tuning in to see a battle between tech advocates and critics, were starting to hear a message of empowerment and transparency. Ethan and Maria's calm, reasoned responses were starting to cut through the noise. They weren't just defending their technology, they were defending the idea that humanity should have the right to choose its own future. When the interview finally ended, the studio lights dimmed, and Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. The battle wasn't over, but this moment, this test of trust, felt like a small victory. As they left the studio, Maria turned to Ethan. "How do you think it went?" Ethan smiled, a little weary but proud. "Better than I expected. We didn't win everyone over, but we showed people who we are. And we made them see that we're not just about technology. We're about making the world better for everyone." Maria nodded. "It's not about convincing everyone. It's about staying true to the mission. And I think we did that today." Ethan looked out at the skyline as they made their way to the car. The battle for the future was far from over, but today, they had shown the world that trust was something they were willing to earn. One conversation at a time. The aftermath of the televised debate had been intense. News outlets continued to dissect every word spoken, every gesture made. Ethan and Maria had expected the scrutiny, but even they were surprised by the mixed reactions that followed. Social media was ablaze with both support and outrage. Some hailed the Humanity Project as a revolutionary force for good, while others warned of the unforeseen dangers of tampering with human nature. Yet, amid the storm of commentary, there was an unmistakable shift in the air. People were no longer merely arguing about the potential dangers of the technology. They were starting to ask what the future might look like if they embraced it. What if the benefits outweighed the risks? What if the world could finally bridge the gap between the privileged and the underserved, between the able and the disabled? A week after the broadcast, Ethan and Maria sat in the conference room, reviewing the data from their campaign. Maria tapped her pen on the table, her eyes scanning the charts on her laptop. "It's working," she said, looking up at Ethan with a satisfied smile. "We're seeing an uptick in positive engagement. More people are signing up for our outreach programs. More governments are reaching out for partnerships. I think we've turned a corner." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "It feels like it, but this is just the beginning. The hard part is still ahead." Maria nodded. "You mean proving we can actually make good on our promises?" "Exactly," Ethan said. "We've shown people the possibilities. Now we have to deliver. We need to make sure the technology is accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy, but the marginalized, the disabled, the underprivileged. We can't afford to let anyone fall through the cracks." Despite the growing support, the Humanity Project faced its most significant challenge yet. A group of investors, who had been skeptical from the start, voiced concerns about the long-term sustainability of the initiative. They questioned whether it was feasible to provide the neurosphere at such low costs, especially when there were still so many technical hurdles to overcome. The pressure to deliver was mounting, and Ethan could feel the weight of it every day. He spent long hours in the lab, reviewing data, speaking with engineers, and ensuring that every iteration of the technology was being tested to its fullest potential. Maria, ever the optimist, continued to lead their outreach efforts, traveling to countries around the world to foster partnerships with governments, NGOs, and local leaders. The stakes had never been higher. One evening, as they were both heading home after another long day, Maria turned to Ethan. "Do you ever think about what's next? After all this is over?" Ethan paused, considering her question. It was something he hadn't allowed himself to think about much lately. For the first time in years, the future seemed uncertain, full of promise, but also riddled with challenges. "I think about it," he said slowly, "but not in the way I used to. I used to think about success in terms of how far we could push the technology. Now, it's about something bigger. It's about how we can make a real difference in the world. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who's ever felt like they didn't have a voice." Maria smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "You've always known what matters, Ethan. You just had to find the right way to show it." Weeks turned into months, and the Humanity Project began to take shape in ways that no one had imagined. The first full-scale Neurosphere initiative in a developing country launched with remarkable success. People who had once been limited by their circumstances, be it physical disabilities, cognitive impairments, or lack of educational opportunities, were now experiencing a world of possibilities. Jamal, who had once been paralyzed, was now not only walking but engaging in activities that had once seemed impossible. His story became one of many, fueling the fire of hope for people everywhere. Ethan and Maria watched with pride as their dream began to evolve into a movement that transcended borders. But as the project grew, so too did the complexity of its challenges. Governments, eager to harness the power of the neurosphere, began to impose regulations. Some wanted more control over the data, while others sought to limit the technology's reach to certain groups of people. Ethan found himself in a delicate balancing act, trying to appease politicians while staying true to his core values of accessibility and transparency. One day, Ethan received a call from an old friend, Dr. Langdon, the futurist who had once been one of the staunchest critics of the Humanity Project. "Ethan, I've been following your progress," Langdon said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "I have to admit, I was wrong about you. You've pulled it off. The world is changing, and you're leading the charge. But there's something you need to know. The governments are not just interested in the technology, they're interested in controlling it." Ethan's heart sank. "What do you mean?" Langdon sighed. "They want to use the neurosphere as a tool of power to control populations. You've given them a way to manipulate people's minds. They don't see it as a tool for empowerment anymore. They see it as a tool for domination." Ethan stared at the phone in disbelief. For a moment, he felt a coldness settle over him. The very thing he had worked so hard to prevent, the misuse of their creation, was now a real and present danger. The sense of responsibility that had always weighed on his shoulders now seemed like an insurmountable burden. He picked up the phone and called Maria. "Maria, we have a problem." The days that followed were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and late-night discussions. The reality of their situation was clear. The Humanity Project was at a crossroads. Ethan and Maria had always known that their work came with risks. But now, those risks were no longer theoretical. They were staring them in the face. Ethan and Maria made the decision to take action. They would not allow their technology to be used for anything other than its intended purpose, to empower individuals, to give them the freedom to choose their own path. They would fight to ensure that the neurosphere remained a tool for good. As they prepared for their next move, Ethan looked at Maria, his resolve stronger than ever. "We're not backing down," he said firmly. "Not now. Not ever." Maria smiled. "No, we're not." And so, with the weight of the future on their shoulders, Ethan and Maria stood together, ready to face whatever came next. The world was changing, but they knew one thing for certain. They would fight to ensure that it changed for the better, for all of humanity.